and on YouTube.
All right.
I'm gonna be internet famous. Appreciate it.
I got you, Bay.
Can you make me? I don't. You might be on Diablo, but if you're on your admin screen at all,
No, I
think
can do that.
Do it. Make me a familiar actor.
Familiar actor.
Create an actor of type familiar.
Okay.
So I can make my familiar.
Create actor type familiar.
Yeah, and then just assign it to me. Unless you don't want to use it as an actor.
No, it's fine.
It has stats and stuff on it that way.
Yeah. Let's go configure ownership. It is owned by Ground Loops. There you go. You now own that familiar.
Select a master. Wait, what? Oh, okay.
Wah, wah,
Creature type.
wah, 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 wah.
Are you okay with it being a centipede? That's not in a.
I have no
real rules about it. Okay.
Look, I want shit to be weird.
Okay.
Because it'll keep people entertained. That's the way.
I think it's clearly shaping up to be that. I don't know. Yeah. What the other group that Wendy. Well, it's family group, right?
Yeah, they're all normal. They're playing with the default characters you get in the beginner's box.
So I thought about there's not a playable badger. There's not a playable badger, but the other went the mole, like a mole. I thought about maybe my animal companion would be a mole instead.
Yeah.
My familiar would be a mole, so then we would have 3 of the wind and the willow, and I would just have a little suit on it. A little tweed jacket or something.
Yeah.
But I was really excited to see that Spencer was doing the deep rat too. Or whatever, the underground rat type, whatever they're called.
Oh, yeah. No, yes.
Not Spencer, but
Brandon. Yes.
Yeah, Brandon was doing deep rat. And because part of this whole idea is like this fast. I think I'm going to think that where I'm going eventually is underground. Because the centipede is obviously a on and slightly under the ground person. I'll be very intrigued by his tales of the under, whatever they call that now.
Spencer's got some pretty lofty goals for his character too, which is pretty cool. I'm glad, again, I'm really glad he's excited about it, and I am eager to work with this as long as everybody recognizes that we're on at least a 10 level path through a mega dungeon.
Yeah.
So I gotta tell you, I've been playing my Sorc my lightning Sorc in the thing, and I haven't done a whole lot of work tailoring my character to make it more effective. I've just basically been going for all the lightning skills and leveling them up and stuff. But I feel like my potency is just incredibly limited.
It was a lot of the things that make, or at least I shouldn't say, I'm not like most people diving into the nitty-gritty of a build, but I know a lot of the things that I was utilizing on my build to make it fun and effective
Right.
And you're probably not running any a full set of aspects too, because you're leveling.
Yeah.
So you're probably missing.
I haven't even put my freaking. Now that I think about it, I took my level in Fireball, and I haven't even put my Fireball down in my freaking.
What will probably increase mathematically, give you the most bang for your buck, if you haven't done it, is just make sure you're equipping, certainly at low to mid levels, the highest item power of the weapon, and almost ignore the stats, because the item power is your damage for weapons. And then make sure that you've leveled the weapon to 4 levels of upgrade. And you have a very massive boost in damage, you know, for a lot of the leveling process. Now, it's not going to be true. Like, at the end, the stats are going to eclipse everything else, but was huge damage boost just by those upgrades
What? Where do I set my enchantments again?
on your skill page. So S or
Yeah, it's the S key.
you get at the bottom.
I'm not seeing them.
Oh, are you level 15 and have you done the quest?
Yes.
No, I don't know. There should be 2 slots at the bottom of your S page, not the ability tree, but the like S, whatever.
Yeah.
that called
Okay.
it.
Okay. Okay. There they are. But I'm not like when I click on them. I'm not. I
You
guess
have
I got to drag to
into
them. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want fireball. Where did fireball go? What do you mean not yet learned? I put a point in that. Fuck you.
I really wish they would fix these bugged builds.
And by fuck you, I mean, oh no, I didn't put a point in it, and I thought I did.
Which bugged builds? Like broken,
The-
good broken, or like literally
the bad
bugged?
broken one. There's what a barbarian build and a druid build that there's a combination that basically can allow them to essentially do billions of damage.
Yeah, yeah. I think a shred druid has a screenshot of 2 billion damage. I think.
Yeah, so it's like, see, my thing is like, so with the build
Yeah.
I was running on Sorc, with the changes they did, I caught like 3 or 4 different changes
Yeah.
and got 100% bonus on Sorc.
Well, everybody who was running cooldown reduction and vulnerable damage got hit, including like shred druids and stuff. But you have a build that I think was very hit. Like they didn't change Sorc, but what they did was they made cooldown reduction. They kind of took that away, right? That sort of went down a lot, and then vulnerable damage crap went down.
And that,
I didn't actually get affected that much on my burn sword.
yeah, I run a slight variation, but essentially an arc lash.
Yeah.
And it got decimated. So I decided with the season, I'm like, I want to get another Sorc right now, especially if they're talking like season 2 before really fixing this right. I don't know if the timeline changed. That was the initial thing, but so I've looked at it and I said, well, I'm going to roll something new. So I rolled a rogue to, give it a shot. Don't normally play melee classes, and what I've realized is my Sorc caught the nerf hammer hard on that build. The rogue running World Tier 3 Nightmare Dungeons right now kills and cuts through mobs in the dungeon bosses as fast, if not faster than the Sorc did when the Sorc was running the ultimate. This is continuous all the time.
And what build was that? I'm sorry.
So I had Arc Lash on the Sorc.
No, I mean your new one.
And Flurry.
Yeah, I started a rogue for this. I haven't really played the season yet. The very intro, but I started a rogue. Just to do, I mean, the only rogue, I think all rogues have to be penetrating shot of some form, but,
I have no bolts.
okay.
And it was just, it steamrolls the thunder. Like, my Sorc can do that when the ultimate is on.
Right. But what level differential are you running?
I need time.
Well, I mean, I'm 54 here. That was 73. This is faster in the dungeons at 54 than that.
Right, but what, I'm saying what level is your dungeon, sir? Were you
Right
saying
now,
you're,
what I've been running like 8s and 9s.
oh, so 8s and 9s would be 62, right? That 8 would be 61. Level
Yeah, so-
61.
So
So
I'm
plus
able to
7.
pretty quickly cut through that at 54.
Yeah, that's good.
So it's like it's feeling like this is way more consistent and more solid in damage, and it's like makes me even more confused how that other class got hit so hard. When it was like, I'm playing it now, I'm like, man, I was already getting the raw end of the deal compared to what I was experiencing. And then I was like, running a PvP area, and I ran by a druid who like, just like turned and put me once.
I need time.
Yeah, 100% killed me. 20 levels. It's got like.
How is that even possible?
They never see.
I know, but PvP you have 95%. Even through the PvP, the PvP a fair amount, but like you should be. That's weird because your player reduction should be like 95%. But maybe he's just doing such a massive amount. That's interesting.
Yeah, just pretty absorbent.
Yeah, I've never been one-shotted. I've had some people delivering enormous amounts of damage, but never so much that I couldn't teleport. At least once.
Let's see, does it say who? I wish it showed you. I wish it showed you the damage that was done. It's not a combat log, is it?
No. What's a good centipede name? I wonder centipede's name.
Mixelplick.
That's not bad. I would do it probably, but let's look at Latin names and pick one.
Should choose Latin for many legs.
Oh. Genus of the house centipede is Scutagera. I can just make it Scoot.
I'm out of mana.
Scoot, yeah, that's good.
That's good. Alright, let's do that. UTE or OOT? Big questions. We'll do UTE, okay. There we go. I'm hoping in the next, I don't know, week or so, I'll really start digging into the season. I just want to finish the battle pass. Like I don't really want to play another character to the high level I played the first character yet. I'll save that for a season down the road. I just want to get the stuff that theoretically I bought.
Yeah.
Out of mana once again.
Unless I get like super just enamored of the other build or whatever. Guess never say never.
So these windshields that get thrown up, are those just basically blocking range damage?
I missed the first part of that.
These windshields that get thrown up when you're fighting people?
They block range damage and they slow movement through them.
Okay.
They slow range damage, don't they completely block it. They just make the projectile go very slow. But I guess I'm not 100% sure on that. All I know is wherever they're originally cast, it's always safe if you just stop moving. Because you're in the middle of the U. Oh no, I didn't save the centipede art. I think I figured out that AI doesn't know what a centipede is. Well, that's funny. If you only put the word centipede, it does. As soon as you start putting anything else, they're all just kind of alien looking.
To have withstood it for so long. Place of immense hatred.
I guess my plan with the season is like twofold. Main one being, I want to come out of this with a higher level character so I can play that if the fixes they do to the source don't really restore how fun it was to play. So I'll have like a backup main, essentially.
Right.
But I'm curious to see in regards to the season is, with my level of play, can I actually get to the point where I would have gotten the full benefit from a season pass?
Right, yeah,
The full
makes
100
sense.
levels from the season pass, where I'm high enough level to redeem all of the things that I could. You know, in terms of like the cinders
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Where it was like, okay, there might be a fractional value to that pass. But I would love to see for like season 2 going forward that they move the platinum reward higher in the tier, but by achieving that, you can use the platinum to purchase the next season pass.
Yeah. I played a few games recently that was the case. Like if you have to buy it once, but once you buy it, you can
Yeah,
earn
as long
it
as you
again.
play a lot, you
Yeah.
can get the next one. Yeah.
Or it's like
Yeah.
incremental, you know, it's in thirds, and you hit a third, and you'll get the first third of the platinum. Second, you know, and if you complete the full season, you'll get enough platinum to purchase the next or take a dent out of, you know, some form of that. Or in
Yeah.
theory, doing the content, going through all of that again, there's a value to that.
Yeah.
But I question, because I know, like, granted, it's only been like, I guess, a little over a month since launch, and I was in the 70s. But if with like the enhanced XP and the things that come with the season, if 100 is even attainable with my level of play, and if it's not, then it's basically never worth the purchase, because the nice cosmetics kind of require you to get to 100 or closer. So like, if I can never get to that point, then
What? I got some chunky pants already.
yeah, the chunky pants though.
I don't even know what my character looks like in Diablo. I don't know why I don't.
I'll be right back.
There have been a handful of games where I've cared about it immensely, but I think the issue is any game where I spend most of the gameplay zoomed out a lot, like I just don't key into what the appearance is. Like I used to in the era of first-person games where characters were big on the screen, like EverQuest or Final Fantasy XI. Like I know what people I used to play with in that game's characters look like still, like photographically. Like I remember them. Whereas a lot of these games, I couldn't tell you what any of my characters. I don't even know what hair color my character is without loading the game.
And like I on the surface, I see no value in the battle pass. I'm more the curiosity fact of, had I purchased this, would I have even gotten value out of it at my play level over the duration of the season? My initial thing is going to be no. It's a curiosity thing. I don't think it provides enough. Like I said, if buying it once and I knew from the first season that I was able to earn the level required to get the platinum to buy the next one, it might be worth it, because then it's a one-time buy. And I know my play level will afford me to get the next one as well.
Right.
That, there's not, like, I agree. Like, yeah, I've like tweaked my cosmetics at the thing with like the stuff I've got just from playing. But like, I wouldn't ever go to the store and spend $25 on a cosmetic set.
Right, that makes sense.
Nor is that a source of value to the battle pass. Like there's definitely a disconnect there. And like you said, the thing is, you're zoomed out, your character's small. When do I see what I'm wearing? Login screen and when I group. Like when I'm forming a group. Other than that, or like porting in and out of a dungeon. Other than that, I couldn't tell you, like, you know, I know what I'm wearing because I said it, but like people I'm grouped with or running by in the world, no clue. They could have dropped, you know, $60 on a set of gear. I had no idea. And yeah, it lacks that. I think I don't initially like that a $70 game has a cash shop in it.
Well, for cosmetics, I don't care about.
Yeah. But I've always been in the thing of like, I don't care how hard I have to work, but like if I can buy in the cosmetic shop, I should be able to earn it through playing. has always been my take, but at least it's not like a pay to win cash shop.
Yeah.
But like, I would love the ability to be like, yeah, it might take me a lot of grinding and work, but I could get the cosmetic set by playing.
Right.
Or is it like, if I want to fast track that, like I really, for some reason, like the way that looks, I could buy it, or I could work for it over the next few months and then naturally earn it.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know. That's never happening unless they like start quadrupling the prices of games. Like, I don't know how much freaking Diablo I played. It's like a steal to say that cost me $70. Like, I could go to the bar and drink that much in 2 hours.
Yeah. And I know I'm going to play this for hundreds and hundreds of hours. Probably thousands at a certain point. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. They definitely need to tweak it. Maybe we'll see it over time.
Yeah. Okay. I think I've remade this stupid character now. It took a lot longer than...
I didn't know Wes was in Diablo.
Yeah. I think he's AFK right now, but... I need to rest it a little bit more mentally and just a little more of a break before I dig back into the season. Played very hard getting that first character finished. I'm not really even done. There's nothing else I want to do. Like, I think he's only 88, but like, there's not even, all the glyphs are 15. Like, there's really nothing more for me to play for. So I consider that character done. I just need a little break, and then...
Yeah, like if you're casually playing, you might pick up a level here or there or something like, even like you said, that last 10 levels of Paragon isn't going to make a huge difference in power of the character. And
yeah, I think for some, for some builds, like people who like that 6 glyph, or I mean, every glyph is valuable. Like, I don't have the 6 glyph slotted, but that it's not going to be exciting. Like, it would be an incremental damage add, but it's not doing anything exciting. That's why I'm very anxious on the news on the season here to see if these new aspects for the season, the whatever malignant stuff, are fun and cool. Like, the ones I found so far were okay sounding, but there was nothing that made me think, wow, this is really cool and game breaking. Like, there was one that I guess launches grenades randomly that was kind of fun.
I have returned.
Hello.
Made some chorizo queso dip the other night, so I need.
Hey,
to eat
tell me something before you dig back into Diablo. What is it you have that is that is giving the unharmed like that text?
Ooh, let me see.
Do you know?
Let me look. Health estimate.
You active module. Oh, I can see all the modules. Health estimate. Oh, I see. That's cool. And then when I mouse over the Gripply, it says perfectly fine. 5 feet, perfectly fine. What is it telling me is perfectly fine?
That the Gripply has not lost any hit points.
And then underneath that, that's overwriting the word unharmed. So there are 2 different mods that are doing that?
Maybe it has to do with
like, I see
effect?
both. I can't read the word unharmed because it's covered up by 5 feet perfectly fine. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
Okay, it's probably just another mod that has another way to see it. Do you have the token pack? I thought about that. It was $60 for freaking. Is that the one that puts all the art in every monster?
No. There is one that does that.
Yeah.
We own all the monster art is on the thing because we have the packs for the adventures we're running. But I do
But it
believe
did-
I'm running John's version of Foundries, and I do believe he owns the graphics for all things.
Yeah.
All right, you too. I'm gonna bounce. Have a good night, Wes. Maybe I'll catch you on tomorrow. We can
Yeah,
do some
that
runs
sounds
in
good.
Diablo.
Later.
I'm leveling up my my character slowly. Oh no, I've looped around. I've done a bad thing. Where am I? Why am I here? This isn't where I need to be.
All right. Have a good night.
Hey, see you, Poos. Duraku. Yeah, I want to get a drink too. Right back.
Bing, 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 bing.
Out of mana once again.
Do you feel it? The hatred lingers here like smoke. This
Guess I'll put
is
that
where we must
Duraku
perform
in.
the ritual. Place the cursed blades here.
Place the cursed blades.
So I'm looking at the, oh, never mind. I'm looking at the Discord stream, not, I was going to say you're not on camera, but
Oh, here, I'll kill that.
sure.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook and YouTube right now.
Gotcha.
Good. The spirits will cling to their hatred. I am trusting you to defend me. Let us bring these
I
back.
think I've finished all my crap, so I'm gonna get out of the game so you can kill your server whenever you want, but I think I've remade everything. That's good. What's the dungeon thing you said?
The Dungeon Alchemist.
dangerously low on alcohol.
Very sorry.
I was there when Sorc fell. I felt Mephisto's magic clawing at my mind. Even today, when I remember that moment,
Yes, I believe so. The paladins are finally at peace. I could not have done. I must pay the
That's $44.
Yeah, no, it's not cheap. But once you
Looks
see
good,
the
though.
power of it, it's pretty amazing. It basically allows you to define what you want a room to be, and it'll auto-populate it with items associated with that, as well as create, like, you know, functional rooms for, like, you know, with walls intact.
Can you add to the tile set and stuff, like if you design your own pieces?
That I don't know.
That looks pretty sharp.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna purchase it. Not that feel like I'm gonna be running any like
Out of mana once again.
Random personal stuff anytime soon, but that I kind of want it to kind of think about how I'm going to be developing certain stuff. I like the 3D nature of stuff too, even though it's not, you know, useful, but you can create videos flying through your environment.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. Or I'm assuming you have camera control, so if nothing else, you can do good color, good establishing shots, even just like still shots to have up while you're. I really enjoy the idea of Foundry. I'm really excited to start. I would consider running something. My problem with anything that's homebrew is, you know, like it's like the life cycle of homebrew ideas, at least for me. It's like everybody has an idea, but I'm at a point in my life where like I just don't see the point. Like there's so many other perfectly good ideas that are completely done.
Right.
And then I get all that time back. You know, like I have a hard time motivating myself to do it because there's plenty of other stuff that's just as good, if that makes sense. Or it's like, you know, everything's unique. I mean, not to diminish any idea, but it's like, does the world need another?
Yeah.
Like, man, this looks pretty sharp though, doesn't it?
And again, you can export these as video files. So if you create something with a lot of like fog on the floor and things like that, you can export it as a video file that you put on the, you know, as your base map in Foundry.
Peter, you know, is very typical art person reaction to all this stuff. Can't stand the AI.
Yeah.
That we're using AI to generate the crap.
But we're not artistic.
No.
We need all the help we can get.
This is more like the other thing. Whatever Peter used, it's more like it's a drawing tool that is, you know, designed to do maps.
Yeah.
Has whatever tool set makes that easier. But this is more like I could produce something fast with this.
Right.
Whereas.
So my thought process is I want campaign cartographer, or not campaign. Campaign cartographer is for outdoor regions, which I find fascinating as well. But what I want Dungeon Alchemist for is for like, okay, I need a tavern, randomize it, you know, I need you know, I need a connection. I need a dungeon of crypts connecting this and this and this. And I'm not looking necessarily for something that will be run as is, but something that will allow me to basically lay out a base and then tweak it.
So it can't be that far away that I'm not sure anybody would actually run this on their computer. But I think we're probably at present technology. You can have an app on your computer that you can launch locally that would give it control of the mouse and keyboard.
Yeah.
And then you could just say, buy Dungeon Alchemist and make a tavern.
Yeah.
And then it would just do it. I mean, it would be a fairly trivial, considering what AI is capable of doing. Like just buying the thing in Steam and then using the program. I don't know. I've seen some stuff recently, like on the technical side, like development threads about the auto-generated code. It's kind of scary, honestly. How good it can do, at least at the source code, like application, like front-end type code that as always, it's sort of all the same kind of stuff anyway.
Well, the only issue I really have with AI right now is the lack of traceback ability. It needs to be able to trace where it's getting its ideas and how it founded them and be able to manipulate them and that kind of stuff for it to be like a...
but we don't do that. Like, if I were to come up with something, I can't tell you I didn't see a centipede.
Well, but...
when I was 14.
But like, there's a difference between having an idea and then, like, being a computer. You should be able to... Yeah, I think that there's a difference. And I think that... For instance, I think that the results I get from, like, Bing and DALL-E are a little frustrating because I'm not 100% sure how to take an idea and go, no, I like this, but I want to tweak it in this way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I absolutely can't say, hey, I like this character you just came up with. Put this character, like still recognizably this exact thing,
right,
in a different pose. I'm just going to get some other random surrealistic thing.
Right. And I think that is akin to the same issue, which is, are you able to trace what you've done and modify it based on...
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. No, I agree.
God damn it.
I need time to prepare that.
I'm very unimpressed with like being create, really. I mean, I'm impressed in that it's like freaking would have been so mind-blowing as to kill somebody probably a decade ago.
Yes.
But it is extremely samey. Like a given prompt will generate the same thing.
Yeah.
Ad nauseum, and you can change one adjective, and then there's no real rhyme or it doesn't seem as it doesn't, Turing-wise, seem as intelligent as some other models. It seems like I am just getting randomly, if that makes any sense. Like I'm getting very consistently the same thing.
100%.
Yeah.
How's it going, JB Day? Yeah. No, I've been hanging out. I've been doing some streams. Not as many lately because POC was recently happened recently, and some other things that have been going on. But I've been around. I am still twitching.
Still what?
Twitching. Doing Twitch.
Oh, twitching.
Well, we did stream stuff. We just never had anybody who was very interested, and so when some of the things broke down, we didn't really complain too much about,
There's nothing here. No clue, no hint of Simon.
What, streaming from POC? Or...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You finally completed your parody dub of?
What?
How do you?
It has been long, long. I followed him, hunted him, for Rathma can show you. Old spell. My head, take it. Will resist.
So you're doing a dub of Attack on Titan with Will Smith? I can see that. Seems legit.
Sorry.
You're not a One Piece person, are you?
I have watched about 340 episodes of One Piece.
So none, so barely any of it.
I've watched about a third of it.
Place
Um,
candles.
so many people just going crazy over the movie.
It looks good. I don't blame him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anything about it, but I can't believe. I mean, it's a testament to it that somebody could make a live action version of something like that and have the diehard fans all buy into it. For sure.
Well, one of the things about
Goes there.
anime is that its particular medium
Begin.
estimates certain theatrical elements that people imagine would be cool in a more theatrical environment. And so, like, I feel like a lot of anime wants to be cinematic, but it's anime. And a lot of people imagine that in a cinematic anime would be amazing. So I can see where they're coming from.
Don't understand and will doom us all with your arrogance.
Right.
And I will act in accordance.
For instance, one of the things that I hate about One Piece and why I like Full Metal Alchemist more than Brotherhood is because I'm not a big fan of like the artificial facial features, like the, you know, turning the mouth into a squiggly line with a drop coming from it, or, you know, these dramatic, non-realistic kind of anime shorthand things. And so I'm kind of excited about what they're gonna do with the live action.
Maybe they'll be doing that in CGI. They'll just.
I don't think so.
We must leave now if we mean to reach Backwater.
No, I don't think so either, seriously. But yeah, there's a lot. That's why I don't watch a lot of anime. I mean, it's an incredibly valid and amazing art form, but I don't think I started young enough for a lot of the way that tells stories to not seem weird and stilted to me.
Right.
I started too old to make it seem natural.
Right.
I think.
Well, we grew up on things like Ninja Scroll and Akira, which
Right.
were heavily realistic anime kind of environments.
Right. And
But-
you know, if we're talking like manga, if you're talking print, like it's kind of the same thing as comic books, right? It's got its own language and
Right.
way of doing it. And then like what we think of as like produced anime, God, it's all driven by production times and
Yeah.
budgets, and so there's just ways they do it that I don't like it. I don't like fight scenes. I don't like filler episodes. I feel like I'm being violated.
I get that, and I understand it. There's certain things that I don't care for in anime, and it's not that I don't enjoy anime. It's just that it's akin to watching like. Well, I mean, I think that there's a lot of superhero tropes that a lot of people don't appreciate.
Oh yeah, 100. I mean, yes, it's well understood that I'm not like the biggest fan of those
Yeah.
either. So,
So anyway.
but yeah, but like, valid because a lot of that came from. But what it's weird though, when I think back like to say Tim Burton's Batman,
Mm-hmm.
like which I loved, but I guess it's because of some person who I probably highly respect as an artist did it. But what I loved about it was that it stayed true to the storytelling methods of comic books.
Right.
So I don't know how to square that because I do like that in certain contexts. I guess in the right hands, like I'm all on board with it.
Right.
It's
For
really
instance,
the only Batman I liked.
have you
I mean,
watched the Peacekeeper series?
No, I've heard it's quite good. I mean, fun.
I think you would find it highly amusing, and it taps into a lot of
I'm afraid
the
that's all I know
tropes
about
that
You should seek out
um
in Zarbinzet to
oh,
acquire the
JBJ says the weird anime faces are called Kyoge.
to apply it to.
Okay.
Process is quite
Good
safe
information.
and simple.
But yeah, I agree with you, JBJ. Like, I found Death Note compelling because it didn't have that shorthand, weird facial reaction thing. And Attack on Titan didn't either. I've really enjoyed Chainsaw Man as well.
I've heard that's good too. I'm trying to.
It's got this incredibly shaded anime style that is really high quality.
It's my son's.
We watched, and I've heard. Oh God, I don't want to be like the old guy with
Demon Slayer.
Playing. Maybe it's really good too. Like, I think it's one of the most popular. Whichever one.
Yeah,
is,
no,
like,
Demon Slayer is huge. I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard really good things about it.
Stop moving, you beast. I'm trying to get you packed as fast as I can. No,
trying to get into the stream here with. I can't see chat. So.
Oh, I need to turn off.
Okay, there we go.
Are you still in my
maybe.
server?
I'm in the No, I'm not in your
Okay, I'm gonna turn that off then because it's kind of pointless for me to have.
Oh. Okay. Okay. I think I've figured it out. What do I do on the Facebook stream? Like, can I support? Is there something I can do that would be?
You
of
can
any
subscribe.
benefit?
There are support tools there that you can use. You can also buy stars. They're like bits.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm stuffing my face. Nom, 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 nom.
Yeah. Sure.
Wait, the anime English dub never have any cursing in Attack on Titan? Wow, I'm surprised by that. Oh wait, I've got a bunch of new stuff here. What do I want?
Yeah, that's a lot of delay, isn't it? On the
About 25 to 30 seconds on Facebook. Which I don't necessarily think that's horrible, but it is pretty amazing how much difference in like community interaction you get when you have instantaneous reactions, you know?
yeah. I wonder what. I mean, you would probably have a better handle on it. I wonder what percentage of people that watch streaming regularly, like, are actually sitting at a computer near a like they would interact versus it's on and they're in the room on their couch or whatever and they wouldn't ever they're watching but they wouldn't ever
Yeah, that's a tough one.
So,
I found that on Mixer, I had a higher degree of interaction than I have had on other platforms. And I think that Kick is getting a lot of that right now too, because the people who are going to Kick are there to interact, you know?
when I think of like, because I don't really watch. It's not a it's not a media I consume. I don't really watch streams, but like when I think of people watching streams for long periods of time, I usually don't think of them of not being at the computer, like they're
Right.
like lying on their couch or something, or lying in bed, or
When we were on Mixer, we were very surprised to discover that about over 40% of our viewers were mobile. I was very surprised by that.
like Peter watches all this, whatever the probably the on trend people are that have these giant chat rooms and just wildly scroll. Like it seems like it's contributing nothing
Right.
to a community. It's just like endless spam of.
Yeah, I don't know. Like the people who have thousands of people watching them, I can't understand how they are able to maintain any kind of community at all. It just feels like a zoo.
Yeah, and they occasionally will pick something out of the chat. Like say, oh yeah, or you'll have people can send commands and chat. It's highly automated, and people. I don't know. It's just that it's a different vibe, right? I think I'm not the audience for this.
No, I actually have not watched streams outside of a desire to understand my,
Right.
my colleagues in quite a while. Well, I mean, this a similar thing happened with podcasts. Like in general, the kind of podcasts I used to make, I will not listen to.
I need time to do that.
Why?
I don't like streamy, like random stream of consciousness kinds of stuff. I like very concise, focused podcast content.
There's some podcasts that, for some reason, like the host is just able to keep the conversation go. Like they have just a knack,
right,
for talking with people, and they're not always podcasts I would like, or podcasts that I agree with philosophically or spiritually. I mean, like objectively speaking, like Rogan is freaking amazing at talking to people.
Yeah.
I don't like the man, but geez, like he just knows how to make you keep listening, as long as it's not a topic that's going to enrage you.
Right.
With other people, like freaking Ira Glass, like people, just ways people just have a knack.
Right.
Sometimes for doing it. I don't think the content. I don't think I listen to podcasts anymore I don't think I really care what it's about. I care about, like, for some reason, there's some of them have kind of a methadone sort of feel. Like I'm cool listening to that for an hour.
So I listen to a lot of podcasts for content. I'm a huge fan of 99% Invisible, which is kind of an engineering.
That's good. Yeah, I've heard that. That's good.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. And like I'm also a huge fan of Skeptoid. Skeptical.
Yeah, I'm lukewarm. I get it. I understand the appeal. Yeah.
And then I love Wait, Don't Tell Me.
Yeah, I do too. I go through phases on that. But geez, I go back on that 30 years or whatever.
Like I listen
to it on the radio.
I listen to Wait, Don't Tell Me every single week.
Well, let's do a lot of This American Life. I still think This American Life is the best podcast. Now it is a little bit of an old
Radio Lab is
thing,
also is of similar.
I don't. Radio Lab did nothing for me. I need to listen. I need to give it more chances. Yeah, it just seemed. I don't know. What I like about This American Life is that This American Life understands that they're exploring issues at a surface. They're telling stories, just like old school 60 Minutes.
Yeah.
And what other podcasts that or things like Adam Ruins Everything, or things like that, where they're really taking this very superficial, highly oversimplified look at issues to attract a contrarian audience. And I don't like. I feel like I understand that issues are not that simple. I feel like I'm
Right.
just not easily fooled in that way. So I don't like a podcast. I'm very sensitive to a podcast thinking it's a deep dive when it's not.
Right.
And This American Life manages to always understand itself.
Yeah.
Like, it just, for some reason, it always works for me. Radio Lab, sometimes I'm like, that's not exactly right. I just get that reaction.
That's kind of funny. I'm very surprised by that.
But I need to listen to more of it. I only listened to probably a handful of episodes, like 3
Yeah.
here. I mean, I probably haven't given it a fair shot.
So, I listen to some other podcasts. Like I really like Science Versus. I don't know if you ever listened to that one, but it's basically like, okay, here's a controversial topic. Let's see what the science says, and it'll have hundreds of citations. You know, which is kind of fascinating.
The other thing is, this is maybe another reason Radio Lab doesn't take a lot of boxes for me, is I like to hear from more than the hosts.
Right.
I like to hear from the people it's about, which This
Yeah.
American Life is very careful at doing.
Yeah, I can see that. Radio Lab is very much a host reaction show.
Yeah. I just get sucked in more with the human story of having the actual person there, even when I know it's probably coached along a little bit or whatever, or heavily produced. At least if it's done in a self-awareness. I don't know.
Right. No, I get it. I'm very picky about the podcasts I listen to. I really like 99% Invisible. Probably.
I need to listen to that one. I've heard a lot of good things about that one.
Yeah. It's stupendous. I mean, obviously some of the things are going to be a little more, like, wait, really, than others. But like the basic process is, here is this thing that you accept in your day-to-day life. Let's talk about how it got there and why you aren't aware of its existence for the most part. I'm trying to think of some of the I love Skeptoid just mainly because I want to hear, like, okay, here's the current pseudoscience woo and bullshit that's going around right now. Here's the alien story that's really popular right now. Let's talk about it.
What I miss is Art Bell, honestly.
What?
I miss Art Bell so much.
Why?
Art Bell was almost the perfect radio show. I used to commute to Tuscaloosa from Birmingham, because when I first started with IMAX, I was working in Birmingham and I was driving to Tuscaloosa. So I would work till midnight because I was a young kid.
Yeah.
So I would drive home, like, top down at like 2 a.m. on the interstate, like 5 nights a week, and Art Bell would be on
I'm not
radio.
saying that I don't understand listening to Art Bell. But
I miss it because he was like, I don't know if you really know, because you're not a sports person, like who Feinbaum is.
I know who Feinbaum is.
And what the Feinbaum show is, which is not a sports show. It's something about the way he interacts with batshit crazy people.
Yeah.
It's just something about the way he does it that makes it entertaining, and you have regulars, and you never really know how serious he's taking himself. He just walks this perfect line, which Art Bell did. Like, I always felt like the show was entertaining, which is what I was wanting. I'm not trying to learn anything from Art Bell. Like, I could listen to it and the hour would pass instantly. So it always served up just the right amount of...
I guess maybe I've like a long time ago, I used to think what he did was kind of innocent and funny. And I think after watching a large number of people get fixated on disinformation and conspiracy theories and all that kind of stuff, I don't feel like that's safe ground anymore.
I don't know. Well, no, I don't think it is anymore. I don't know that a show like Art Bell would be read would kind of read the same way anymore. I think he existed in a time when most of his audience well understood that everything that's happening on the show and everything a host is saying is almost certainly not true.
See,
But
but
what if it was? I don't feel like it would have been read the same way today. 'Cause
But see, I think one of the things that's problematic is that I thought that everybody got that back in the day, and I'm no longer convinced that's the case. I think that a large chunk of them took
no,
it.
I think today that's different. I think today there's too many people in today's world. The sources that, confirmation bias in this age is way more powerful than it was. Like, the most well-intentioned and bright people can get into a position where they can't possibly understand why everybody can't see, obviously, things are the way they think they should be.
Right.
And the other people are crazy. Because the information is so well conveyed and mutually corroborating that, facts can be used to prove virtually any conclusion.
Right.
As long as you're sufficiently intelligent to put them together the way they need to be put together,
Right.
you can use facts to support everything.
Yeah.
So facts are like the worst possible way to actually conclude anything.
Yeah.
And that wasn't true then. I think he lived in a different time, and I found it very entertaining. I mean, who knows? I haven't.
Well, I mean,
surveyed
I used
people
to
who listen to him, but
it's the same attitude as like I used to love watching In Search Of with freaking Leonard Nimoy.
Oh, I did too.
But I was foolishly convinced that was a legitimate, like, look at the circumstances. And I think, and like, when I learned that shit was bullshit, I felt a little betrayed by it.
Search Of is an interesting one because I would have taken that show more seriously when I was watching it than I know it to be now, which is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Maybe that doesn't bother me as much, but I get your point for sure.
And like
we saw an episode of that about freaking Coral Castle, the Stonehenge type place built south of Miami.
Yeah.
And we went to visit it, and the first half of the tour was them explaining that Leonard Nimoy had lied to you, that there's literally no mystery here. Please stop coming here because of the In Search Of episode.
Right.
So yeah, I get that.
But like, I think my thing is, in my heart of hearts, like, and I posted a meme the other day that basically was saying, like, I find it terrifying that when we were younger, we thought people were just stupid because they were misinformed. And now that they have the old internet at their disposal, we know different, and it's scary. And I think that's kind of where I am, in that, like, I loved the idea of a bunch of like ghost hunters and stuff like that when I was a kid, because I thought it didn't hurt anybody. But now that whole like subversion of reality in favor of an alternate reality thing is endangering us. And so I'm less warm to it all.
Yeah. I think, like in a weird way with AI and all the, hokey metaverse posturing all the companies are doing, is that, like, in a very real way, by the time we're in 30 more years or whatever, we're not going to understand what real means. It's not going to matter because everybody can just manifest alternate realities that they might as well exist.
Yeah.
We're not going to have any understanding what the damn kids are doing. So I think because I think like ghost hunters, like I can't believe anybody watches Ghost Hunter. Sorry if there's, well, I guess there's not a person that will be offended right now, but I can't believe anybody would watch that and think it's
asking about them?
100% real. They have to understand it's goofy.
That's just it.
But
I don't think that's the case anymore.
but I wonder how much of it is like performative. Like
Yeah.
they're just we're not interpreting the social cue. I don't know. It's hard to express what I'm trying to say.
Well, I mean,
I think
it's
that
like
people are
professional
watching-
wrestling. So
right.
We all knew it was fake, and we never thought it was real. But at the same time, like, we're finding out that people do think that's real in a certain way.
Right. But I don't know. I have a hard time conveying. It's kind of like nowadays, I'm glad I don't have young kids because I'm a little worried by what saying Santa was real is going to actually do.
Right. Yeah. I feel a little guilty about that. Like, because it's setting people up for accepting social cues for illogical beliefs. And I kind of feel like a little bit of a douchebag there, but I can't imagine not doing it. And it's weird.
I think there's a difference too between like the resurgence of horoscopes and all that stuff. I think there's something weird going on in the metacognition about it where there's another kind of thing. It's true or false, or you believe it or don't believe it. There's just kind of like the Japanese are with Shinto, like it's true enough. It's true because we're using it.
Yeah.
And it's like a weird middle ground that like a lot of people are engaging with now. It's kind of like ghosts to me. Ghosts or horoscopes are different kinds of things than this person is abducting children and eating them to stay young.
Right.
Or like one is like an actual fact. It is a factual like libel, whatever the legal term is. Like the other one is like this social thing that I don't think I'm connected with, where of course you have all these fantasy environments. That's part of like your reality.
Right. Well, and
Scorpios are
that's the terrifying thing to me is that, when I first started digging into skepticism, like a lot of it felt like a bunch of killjoy shit, And then I started seeing more and more that like setting people up to believe nonsense led them towards stuff like 9/11 conspiracy theories and other nonsense. And where it really came to a head, and this is a confession I'm not necessarily proud to make, is I saw a Holocaust denial video called 1/3 of the Holocaust. And in it, the person who presented the information made a very scientific argument for why at least a third of the Holocaust that was claimed to have happened couldn't have happened. And so I'm sitting there as a rational human being, knowing that there are anti-Semites and, these kinds of situations where I shouldn't believe this stuff. And yet it was working on me, And I think that's where I got the most scared is I realized that there's this whole angle of pseudo-scientific arguments that work on smart people very, very well.
Yeah, but so does science, though. I mean, everything works on smart people. Smart people, it takes, you have to, it's really, I really admire somebody when they don't know anything.
Yeah.
Because I know that certainty is like, that's easy. Like everything. Really, no matter what you want to believe, you can go, as long as you're sufficiently intelligent, you can go construct a bulletproof argument for it.
Right.
And then the other option is like completely agnostic, uncertain about everything, nothing exists, reality can't possibly be like nihilism that drives you insane. So choose your poison, I guess, right? But,
and I think what fixed it for me was the concept of credibility. Creating structures of credibility around me and respecting that even if something was 90% credible, there was a 10% chance it was incredible. And trying to make decisions based on cross-referencing multiple sources with various levels of credibility and trying to decide, well, yes, all this is bullshit if giant space hamsters are real, but the odds of that happening are really, really tiny.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And I get that. That makes sense. I got, modulated. My thinking got modulated into the middle again by shows like Mythbusters, or shows that were trying to be like, yeah, we're going to science you. Yeah, this ain't your daddy's science kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That were people, that was just TV entertainment.
Yeah.
Like there were these they're portrayed as valid. You could go like corroborate, read threads and whatnot, but like that's not, these are very superficial shows that even the pro science side had a lot of kind of very hokey faux credibility on it.
Yeah.
That, like people didn't have the patience to understand that like most topics like takes years or decades to understand.
Right.
Like a social media personality isn't going to like drop a load of truth on you about physical chemistry when next week they're dropping one on like the Greek financial system. Like this, they're just trying to get views. Like you either just say I don't have an opinion, or you go spend a year like actually getting an opinion.
Right.
But nobody wants to have no opinion because it's not cool anymore.
Right.
I don't know. Some of those shows I hated. To me, like Mythbusters was right there with Ghostbusters, with Ghost Hunters. It was just a show that was just for entertainment. Like.
Yeah, but at the same time, like I felt like what it was promoting, the kind of thinking that it was promoting, was healthy, which is don't just freaking take things at face value. Try to test your, like, really all it takes is a freaking modicum of incredulity to fix a lot of the problems in the world.
I need time to
Not wrong.
And so I'm torn
But they're
because
also not all easily fixable. It's not like it all, like you take that show. I'm not trying to hate on Mythbusters. I don't know why that's even the example I'm using. But you take that show, like that. You could also argue the lesson there is that everything is extremely simple and one-dimensional, and a 15 minutes worth of TV content can debunk like 10 years of shit. Like, there's no need to dig deeper. Do your quick superficial test and trust your senses, and then move on. Which is not exactly good advice either.
No, it's not. But like, let's take for example the anti-MSG stuff, right?
Yeah. And I'm not super familiar. I mean, I know that there was a movement.
There was a movement that was largely based on poor research and anecdotal evidence. And every time I've ever said in any public forum that there's no science to support the idea that MSG is harmful, I get immense blowback. From very specific people who are like, you don't know what MSG does to me,
Right.
And I feel like shows like Mythbusters and Skeptoid and other things like that at least say your personal experiences are not going to give you the best results for understanding things, And I think that's an important lesson. And I don't know how many times it's taught in an environment where people will actually get it.
Right, but is it crazy that MSG? I mean, it's like if I spend 2 seconds looking at the FDA report in MSG, it says we were never able to confirm the reports of headache and nausea.
Yeah.
Some people report semi-transient mild symptoms like headache, numbness, flushing, palpitations, and drowsiness in sensitive individuals who consume 3 or more milligrams without food. Typical serving of food contains less than half a gram.
Yeah.
But I mean, all that's saying is that if you got enough of it and you're sensitive, you could have those symptoms. So like a person who's saying that isn't crazy.
Well, but the
They
thing
might
is
be,
that
but, like-
is that they've never been able to prove that anyone
Right.
has any consistency with their claims of sensitivity. That's the
Right.
other issue.
Of course, but that's how, most science works. Like it's not.
You know, it's like,
absolutes.
but now I'll say this. I have learned something recently which kind of surprised me, and that is that they have gained a more positive outlook on the notion of gluten sensitivity, right? Before it was you got celiac or gluten, science was like you got celiac or gluten doesn't affect you, right?
Right.
And there have been some studies that have found that there is more to it than that. So I'm not saying that these things can't exist.
I just think a lot of people, I think you're not one of those people, but a lot of people who don't understand the way statistics and whatnot work will see something like, we were never able to confirm, and they think that means we disproved them.
Right.
Which
And-
most effects are not confirmable at the for that kind of research. It's just, or their money is not there, or they're not doing
Right.
a longitudinal study. I mean,
but-
it's not, it just means we don't know.
Yeah. But like a similar thing is for like aspartame, which like is literally the most studied food compound in the universe. Like there has
Right.
been no
Is that the one they just listed as a carcinogen, though? Like
No.
last week or
That's
whatever?
just it. It's been listed as a potential carcinogen for a while, but that again, knowing statistics and understanding what that means, it doesn't mean that it is a carcinogen.
No,
If-
but I mean, I'm literally. I know that's why you're using the example. Like in the last week, the World Health Organization moved its classification.
Okay. How did the World Health Organization move it?
I just saw the blurb on it. I'm
Yeah.
trying to look at it now. Like
So what
blah,
I've
blah, blah. Limited is the next level up. So limited evidence versus none. Now it says citing limited evidence for carcinogens in humans. We've moved it now. Reaffirmed acceptable intake of 40 milligrams per kilogram. And this was in July of this year.
Right. So I have literally had people ever since I was 16 telling me that aspartame was carcinogenic and poisonous.
Yeah.
And it's
Oh, I remember that when it first came out. Like it was huge. Like I don't know, very divisive fear of it, right?
right. Well, that's just it. It's been out way longer than you and I should be able to remember. It was it was something in the 70s, you know?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, we would have remembered diet soda. I remember vaguely diet soda existing as a thing.
it was, and I think Diet Right was the first one that had aspartame.
That
with it.
sounds right. Yeah.
And but like a large portion of what I've experienced as a person who's talked about these things is that, like, don't get me wrong, I'm never saying that something can't be carcinogenic, but the proof is on the claimant, right? The burden of proof is on the claimant. And
Yeah, I mean, the fact that the world, like, take that as an example, the fact that the world is continuing to spend, I'm sure, hundreds of millions of dollars trying to study it means that the real situation is they don't know, but probably it's fine. And the fact that this year, after so many years in 2023, that a world organization would finally say, actually, this might be an issue, just shows you how long it takes to determine safety of things.
But also the other angle is that a lot of the previous stuff was, well, if you serve 18,000 pounds of it in a single dosage to a rat who only eats 19,000 pounds worth of food a day, it will give them cancer. And there's an angle here which is the rational angle, and there's an angle that is the irresponsible angle to me. And that is, have we done studies? And we've got, aspartame has been consumed by human beings for, 40 years, right? 40, 50 years. And there's no markable increase in...
Right, but now is when they would be getting that. I mean, that's the 30, 40 year kind of longitudinal data, I guess.
But in certain degrees, yes. But the point is that we've had decades of people saying that this is absolutely 100% a carcinogenic substance with no visible increase in cancer rates among the people who are consuming that material. And so
I'm not saying that there aren't crazy. I'm absolutely not saying that people haven't gone absolutely crazy about it. I'm just saying that the people who say it's also incorrect on almost anything to say it's been 100% proven to be safe. Everybody's just kind of weighing the studies. I'm sure if you went and looked at the bibliography of the aspartame studies, you'd find the lion's share of them supporting complete safety, a few showing pretty horrific effects, and a handful showing inconclusive or negative effects.
Right.
And then they look at all this shit together and say, probably we're good, and then they look at it every 10 years or so and keep spending money because the people who are doing the work really aren't that sure. They're going to keep spending money and studying it, and then you end up this month where they go we're going to move it one notch forward. Still fine, everybody keep drinking it, but we're moving the warning light one over to the right.
Yeah. But the problem is that then you end up with aspartame is something that crosses the blood-brain barrier and causes causes autism and does this. And the problem is that in a world of people who do not understand scientific information,
right,
claims of danger without substantive study are creating this mythology in the world that the food on our grocery store shelves is hazardous to us.
Yeah.
And that concept is creating a more dangerous environment for people in general.
I agree. Yeah.
And if you look at the whole organic food debate, it's got more nutrition. It's got more nutrition. It's safer for you. None of that is true, right? And
that might be 100%. That particular issue is all just marketing. Yeah.
Right. And so I find that it is important to, in general, recognize when you have a preponderance of evidence, even if you get one or two papers saying it's gonna blow the world up if you eat it, you need to take that with a grain of salt and pay attention to the preponderance of the evidence.
Yeah. Well, I think what people should do is just ask their medical professional, who will always know more than they will ever get by Googling stuff. You think acetaminophen's maybe a good example, right?
Yeah.
That's probably about to go away. Well, geez, how many decades was that? Did it take to figure that out?
Yeah. But at the same time, you've still got doctors who will say that frickin' vaccines are poison,
Yeah. Well, I mean, if because it's not. They're still doing studies on vaccines we've given to kids for 40 years. They're pulling vaccines. Our daughter had vaccines that were revoked by the time our son was getting them because they waited, 20 years later, they finally got some data. So it does happen, but all you can do is trust the current consensus view. You can't be alarmist about it, but you can't also treat it like it's a religion. Just because they said it's safe doesn't mean that in 30 years you're not going to go oh shit. You're going to stop giving that one out.
Yeah, but at the same time, if I were going to choose the best opinion at any given point in time, the current peer-reviewed consensus would be my most rational decision for making health decisions about vaccinations.
Yeah, but where are you going to get that? If you get that peer review census from looking at the CDC's kind of here's what we think from reviewing the stuff ourselves, that's one thing. If you're going to be I'm going to Google some papers and come to my own,
Right.
investigate it myself. Well, you're going to come to whatever conclusion you are predestined to come to,
Right.
basically. And that's what people do. They don't want to just go listen to an authority or.
Well, and
they
that
want to dig deeper. Like they don't want their doctor. Everybody's like nowadays, like I need a new doctor. I'm gonna keep going to doctors until I get the answer that I'm looking for. Because Google's, somebody on TikTok said it's probably just
like
not
I'll never forget. I had a friend who said, "Look, I need a chiropractor friendly, pediatrician for my 1-year-old son."
Oh God.
And I'll never forget that. And I was horrified. And she's like, "Look, I don't need your opinion on," and I'm like, "You definitely need my opinion on chiropractors for a 1-year-old.
I need time
Yes.
to do this.
And so that's my issue is that, like, do not get me wrong. I'm not saying that science can't get stuff wrong. I'm not saying that it's a crazy world where we just need to automatically believe everything that we need to be fed. But at the same time, there is a certain degree of expertise that has to be respected and understood to make wise decisions. And
Right.
in general, I feel that mythologies like aliens and, just general conspiracy theory nonsense undermine people's ability to make wise decisions about day-to-day stuff like vaccines and chiropractic. And
I see what you're saying. I hope there's a part of me that hopes that there is a difference between a person who likes alien shows and a person who thinks lizard people are in the earth. But you may be right. There's not really that much of a.
And that's just it. Like, I used to think it was funny to think about that stuff. And I think that's before I watched, a bunch of people decide that horse dewormer was a good treatment for COVID.
Well, so like here's a great devil's advocate example. Like this is one of the times during the whole, dark times of Trump. I don't know if this is okay stream talk, but of Trump.
It's fine. I got 2 people watching me. You're fine.
Is that there was I don't know if there's one event. There's been several where like I was like, oh crap, like both sides are pulling the same shit. Where
Right.
Trump was feeding goldfish in
Right.
Japan.
Right.
And he walked up and he was carrying a box of fish food and he sprinkled a little bit, then he kind of awkwardly dumped the entire container of fish food into the koi pond.
Right.
Do you have any recollection of that event?
I do know.
Which
Which is odd because I normally respond to anything that says
Right.
Trump is an idiot. So the fact that I don't remember this.
And then CNN showed the clip, and then all these like koi, like somebody posted it, and people were like, koi farmers were chiming in, like, yes, this has definitely killed the fish. Like, you got a moron. Like, and then Fox, I think it was, posted the video with the rest of the video, wherein the Japanese Prime Minister stepped up behind him and did exactly the same thing.
Right.
And I was like, oh, well, this has been crafted. Like, if I didn't decide to go dig into the other side, I would never know that I was being fooled. I would have just been like, oh, yeah, of course, Trump. What a moron.
Yeah.
And I would have just eaten what freaking PBS was selling, because they did the
Right.
same thing. And I was like, wow, like, they're doing the same crap. They're just formatting it to generate outrage so you'll keep watching it and come back tomorrow and see what the rest of the story is. And that was kind of like, for me, a pivotal thing of like, I need to just, if I don't have time to spend directly involved in getting information, I'm just not going to keep pursuing my own facts about crap.
Right.
Because I can go check all these sources I think are okay, like Politico or Atlantic or NPR, and they're all feeding me the same spun crap if they want to, because they know as long as they all feed it at once, they'll get everybody.
Right.
And I was a little bit taken aback that very reputable sources would engage in like extremely directed editing of a very innocuous event. It's not like this was a big deal. I mean, even if he had overfed the fish, it just stuck out in my mind because I was like, what a small thing to completely spin. And I brought that up several times because a lot of people I know do have generally remembered that event and are completely unaware that there is more to that video. So I don't know. Especially when it comes to like when it comes to things like that, which is not like a scientific matter. It's a matter of reporting the circumstances of an event.
Right.
It's a slightly different thing. I'm trying to think there are other kind of similar kind of examples.
My main frustration with that example, though, is that it's not that what he did wasn't stupid. It's just that the Japanese leader was as stupid as he was.
Well, no, they were doing they were feeding the fish the way they always feed it. Like the
really?
people who were chiming in were not experts. They were like YouTubers. Like they were. Suddenly, everybody was a koi farmer, and everybody was outraged about like everybody's an expert in everything. Kind of stuff. But in fact, he did whatever the ceremony they were doing. He did it exactly right. It's just what would be considered the objective media decided to cut the video before they showed.
Right.
So it was a little bit I was a little bit taken. I get back.
I can understand that, and like, don't get me wrong. Like I want to reiterate that I was totally fished in by this frickin' anti-Holocaust documentary. I'm not, I'm not saying, like, I do believe that good people can be fished in with bad propaganda.
I think there's a way.
Go ahead.
I think there's a way that you can say the media is just savvy enough now that they know a way to say things that people will automatically believe, because people will be like, of course that happened. I knew that would happen. That makes complete sense that that's true. And then they won't be motivated to look any farther.
Right.
I mean, obviously he did that. That's exactly the kind of thing he would do.
And yet, like, with the angle that he's a fucking dumbass, which isn't a bad angle, because he is a dumbass, it's a tough one. Like, it's one of these things. It's like, I don't know. Like, I agree with you that there are certain things that can be presented poorly. Like, something I feel is presented poorly all the time is, people buying luxury stuff on EBT cards. Right? The very nature of that is fundamentally broken. The way of telling the story is fundamentally dishonest. And so I get that.
What was interesting to me is, like, if you think about news when we were younger, and you look about ABC, CBS, NBC, like, generally, if you were to watch the evening news, it would be largely the same stories, other than maybe some local interest stuff, like the national news, right?
Yeah.
The 6 o'clock or whatever, the 6:30, whatever the national news was. Whereas now, because one of the things I do is I routinely look at Fox and like Gab and places that I don't agree with, because I want to understand what the other side is saying, because I'm sensitive now that I'm being just completely misled by my side occasionally. And usually not true, but I always look. And also helps me understand perspectives. But what's interesting nowadays is that when you go to if you go to CNN.com right now, it's not like in the old days, like the cover stories were the same, but they might cover it differently, or they might spin it.
Right.
Whereas now, they're different universes.
Yeah.
Like, there's different stories. Like,
and
CNN is talking about, an ocean ecosystem collapsing as headline news, and Fox is talking about Biden ending, claiming he ended. Like there's completely different universes. Like the
Mhm.
stories don't even cross over at all. There might be one or two stories. So you're not just hearing a spun version of the news. You're hearing an entirely generated set of news. Like Hunter Biden is like that's the top story on freaking every conservative news site for
Yeah.
months about all these different threads of crap going on, and it's not even a story on
No.
like CNN.
Yeah, it's not.
And vice versa. Like there's all these like climate issues on the CNN and Ozempic side effect, and then they're not present at all. I mean, it's like people are just looking through entirely different telescopes now.
But in certain ways I agree, but if you were to say, hey, CNN is focused on climate change tonight and Fox is focusing on Hunter Biden's laptop, like I would be able to say one of those stories is probably legitimate, one of them probably is a political kind of angle.
Well, I think they're both true. I mean, you think of like how many people die a year from falling off ladders, and how many of those people decide to make front page news? I mean, the news absolutely has whatever 12 articles out of literally millions of interesting stories that they can put on the front page.
Yes.
They get to pick and choose like what it is you're going to see in your face, and then that makes a person think, wow, this is what's happening in the country. This is what the country's talking about. The whole country's talking about, you know, Biden or Hunter doing coke at the White House and drug addiction and this lying and this criminal attack stuff that, like, if you only read, say, NPR and CNN, you don't even know are stories. Maybe it's happening, but you're not reporting on it, and then vice versa. Like they're not telling you any. Everybody is just seeing. So it's kind of like it isn't like any news organization has to lie to you. They just have to decide what stories to tell you.
I agree.
Right.
I agree with that, and that was the whole like this is not a new concept, and it's something that's been going on for a while, and it's akin to the fact that the Hillary private server thing was covered like what 10 times more than anything else in that entire news cycle. But that was even among like the left wing channels, like, and
right, I think the divergence is more recent. I think that now that it's, to me, it's more recent that they've decided instead of just printing spinned versions of what people are talking about, they're completely steering the conversation now. They're not even talking about the same subjects. That way, they don't have to spin anything. They just have to. You don't need to lie. You can do factual reporting, and the spin is just deciding what 12 stories are on the front page.
But it's hard for me as a rational person to think that the Hunter Biden laptop story is on any significant coordinated
Well, it's not
plane.
It's not the laptop, right? I mean, there's all this other crap that's going on with him.
Well, but there's no evidence on any of them. It just continues to be this long string of people saying.
I haven't dug into all the details. All I know is, I mean, I don't claim any because I don't.
Yeah.
Not bothered by it enough to read it.
Okay, let me give you.
There's all these business dealings that, like, there are happening, and I don't know whether they mean anything or not. But a conservative media is going through great lengths to report on these probably very uninteresting facts on the front page of the site, whereas other media is just that's not even like news.
Well,
right?
and my argument there would be akin to why serious climate scientists don't debate climate deniers, because by engaging in it on a I understand your argument and I want to refute it level, it provides hello Chris, how are you? Matt. It provides a level of credibility to the opposing arguments that is not necessarily deserved.
Yeah, well, I think I'm saying the same thing. Like there's no need for them to engage. They can just completely focus on different stories and live in their own world. They're not having to like go at each other or say, "Here's why this is wrong."
But I think that's fundamentally like the issue here is that if one were to say, well, the Weekly World News is posting stories that aren't in the news, and that's fundamentally broken. I don't think that's broken. I think that's working as intended. And I think
if a person only reads one site, though, all they're going to see is a curated view.
But I think that if the fucking New York Times were to go in and say, did Hillary Clinton have an alien baby? That's not. That's not.
Right,
that's.
But I'm talking about like mundane things, like for example, the story they have up right now on conservative media site number 1.
Yes.
Is apparently just a factual thing about Biden's son pleading guilty to misdemeanor counts of failure to pay tax.
Right.
Okay. Well, so that's probably factually true, at least but I can tell. He did plead guilty. Not really news, not really that interesting, but it's front page there, and it doesn't exist. Like nobody else, if you don't read that, you wouldn't even know it was occurring. Well, I also didn't know that like some kid died in a jet ski in like the Gulf, right? I mean, I only know what is reasonably presented to me.
Right.
And they use that to like steer attitude.
Well, yeah, no, and I'm not arguing with that. I guess what I'm saying is I think that looking at those who would manipulate the media to try to skew it, as opposed to those who are trying to do legitimate journalism, is fundamentally broken. It's like saying, "Hey, you won't, you're a young earther and you won't debate this evolutionist." Like I'm not necessarily going to say, well, the country's broken because the young earther isn't getting time on CNN.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
And I feel like a lot of times when people look at our spectrum of news and spectrum of like what's important in the country, Fox News is given this freaking illegitimate stance for how it elevates certain things. And you might say, well, you're just against Fox News. Well, yeah, I am, because they're fucking liars and they lie, and that's their goal. They've stated it in no uncertain terms in text messages that have been presented in court. Like their goal is to misrepresent their audience. And so I'm troubled because while I do agree that what things you choose to present can shape the entire news cycle, it's hard for me to feel any compassion or rationality behind a group that has stated in court documents that their goal is to mislead their audience.
I feel like that's probably a little bit of a simplification of what they stated. I think you're talking about with respect to Tucker's show, maybe.
Well, no. It's there were multiple situations where people in Fox News knew that the people they were bringing on to testify about Trump's victory in the 2020 election were absolute kooks and liars.
Are we talking about on Tucker's show or
on regular news? Like there were other news people who said, we don't need to be doing this, and still they were brought on.
Right.
And so like it's a tough one. I run into some difficulty here, and I think in general I used to be far more like both sides thought process than I am now. But
I think that's dangerous. I think if you don't, I think that's like the beginning of like closing off understanding.
But I think that there's an inherent dishonesty that's being ignored by the notion that both sides are equivalent. And I think if we look at things like the idea that the Hunter Biden laptop Senate inquiries are equivalent to the January 6th inquiries, that they are both political witch hunts, is fundamentally broken.
I haven't really heard any news. I mean, I haven't seen any side report anything on the laptop in like
No, there are Senate inquiries.
I believe that. I'm talking about through the front end of like news sites.
Oh no,
Like
no.
There's a bunch of Hunter stories, but they're not that.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, in a Senate inquiry, showed naked pictures of Hunter Biden on CNN or on C-SPAN because that's what they were arguing was being censored by Twitter.
I haven't heard that.
Oh yeah, you should look that up. Marjorie Taylor Greene showed naked pictures of Hunter Biden on C-SPAN.
Is C-SPAN? How do they lean? I don't really know anything about C-SPAN.
C-SPAN is just
exist,
like the
that's
camera.
The congressional feed, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so like it's my frustration comes. Do not get me wrong. I do not necessarily trust right-wing politicians less than left-wing politicians. It's just that the evidence overwhelmingly tends to show that when left-wing politicians are trying to present information, they have a desire to be factually accurate. They might not be. They might not have facts to support what they're doing. But in general, right now, in our political sphere right now, that tends to be the way that they function. Whereas right-wing stuff, it doesn't matter if it's true or false as long as it makes liberals angry that it's out there.
I think that most people I know who say what you're saying find themselves angry all the time because their media is actually doing exactly the same thing. It's generating a constant. If you feel a constant source of outrage, then the same is true of what you're watching.
Well, let me ask you this. This is a serious question. When you think of Kyle Rittenhouse being invited to...
I'm only vaguely of... I know who he's the kid who brought a gun. I completely disconnect myself from stories like that because I don't see what the value in them is.
Okay.
But he's a little Caucasian boy who pulled a gun in presumably self-defense in a protest, correct?
Right, and murdered a couple of people.
It was self-defense, and he shot and killed at least one person died.
Yes.
And he's a hero to some. Is that
right?
Nutshell?
Right. And so now he commonly gets invited to right-wing media events. Do you honestly believe that he is invited because he has some kind of perspective on right-wing intellectualism or commentary?
I would have no way to answer that.
Okay, and here's what I'll say.
I mean, it would be like a similar thing of like, if you ask me, do I think Greta Thunberg is a climate scientist? Like, I don't know. It's a person people will go see, probably.
Right. But the difference here is, okay, and that's actually a really good comparison. So left-wing people tend to think Greta Thunberg is a good person to bring into a discussion.
Which, again, not a person I necessarily know a whole lot about, other than that she's a young student who had a compelling speech at an event.
Right. And her general attitude is we need to listen to climate scientists about what's going on with climate science. And here, let me present some of the things that they've said. Whereas Kyle Rittenhouse is a guy who murdered a couple of people that were liberals, and it made conservatives happy. So they invite him to come to things because he got away with killing liberals.
Right. But I'm not trying to compare what they do. I'm saying, like, do you think that you asked me, do I think he would have a lot to share in terms of conservative ideology or something? The same question would be like, do you think like Greta Thunberg has a lot to share in terms of lecturing on matters having no degrees in anything?
Yes, I actually do, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
I'll explain
Well,
it.
I'm sure, and well, you don't. I mean, I want to hear what you're trying to say, but I'm sure if you ask that to the people who are going to see this young man, they will give a very similar answer from his perspective.
I don't agree. I don't agree. And the reason that I feel that way is because the way I would listen to Greta Thunberg is that she is a person who is parsing established experts in a particular field for public consumption. I would look at her like a Neil deGrasse Tyson, who can often speak on things that he isn't necessarily 100% an expert on, but he can speak on them as a general understanding of how science works and as a person who knows how to communicate that science. Does that make sense?
So you would go see her. It would be a young person who probably has very limited knowledge, facts, in terms of scientifically in these areas, but like it's a perspective. Like she's lived some events that she's very passionate about, and it would be a refreshing perspective. And as an individual, you like to go see her and hear those thoughts.
As someone who is reflecting, experienced, like she is not attempting to say, what I think is right. She's attempting to say, here is the science, and here's what's gone on.
So if I were to fabricate a similar reason somebody would go see Rittenhouse, it would be like, well, this is a young man who was raised right, raised to be part of a God-fearing young man, and was going to try to keep the peace, and has gained a valuable perspective on like how you can't even defend yourself anymore. And I want to hear what he has to say. He's not trying to say he's right or he's wrong. He was only trying to stay alive, and I want to, he's lived something I haven't lived and has a valuable point of view, right? That's what they would say.
And that's just it. I do not think those are equivalent. I do not think that doing
I understand
public...
that, but I understand you don't think, but they don't think they're equivalent either. So in that way, they're the same.
But I don't agree. A creationist saying, I want someone telling me that the Bible is right all the time versus an evolutionist saying, here is what evolution says. These are two different angles on something, and one is inherently intellectually honest and one isn't.
I don't. Are you saying that? I don't. Again, I don't. I wish I knew more about his particular case, but I don't think he's going there to say that lizard people did it or he was attacked by aliens.
He's going there to say. He's going there to say liberals are violent protesters and I murdered them justly. Yes, he is.
Right.
Do you believe that's true? Do you believe that Black
Lives? His case. I'm just saying. I believe that there are people who. I believe that he has a message that resonates with non-zero amount of people, just like Thunberg has a message that resonates with a non-zero amount of people. And I believe that everybody who goes to see him says exactly the same things about why anybody would ever want to go hear her speak as a kid about anything. I think, to me, they're not the same in their actions, but they're the same in their appeal and the audience response. Like they're the same person.
And I think that there is a fundamental credibility gap and a fundamental misguidance associated with one over the other. Again, it would be akin to...
I don't know. I can't. It's kind of a little...
No. And I'm not expecting
the details of what he actually claimed and what he did. So
right.
I don't, I don't know how... I think there was some sort of scuffle, right? And
yeah.
It probably could have been avoided if he didn't have a loaded gun and didn't go there.
Right.
And he felt in his report that he was afraid. I mean, I don't really know the details. I think that's the shape of it, right? Like he thinks he was trying to defend himself and he went to keep the peace and learned a valuable lesson about whatever he thinks he learned a valuable lesson about.
Well, but I guess maybe what I'm saying is that anybody can have a firsthand account of anything. Okay. But a lot of it depends on whether you have credible resources to kind of fall back on what you're saying. You know, it's kind of like Al Gore. Al Gore was saying very important things, and he was publicly denounced for it, even though, for the large part, what he was saying was a very important message that needed to be listened to. And so I guess maybe even so much so that, like, I stopped watching South Park after the Man-Bear-Pig stuff.
Really? I thought it was funny. But
I understand a lot of people
I
thought it was funny.
Yeah, yes.
But
it
as
was,
someone
that was a
who
little while
thought-
after that, wasn't it?
Huh?
Was that contemporary with him running? I don't remember the time
Yes.
frames. It's been too
Yes,
long,
it was
so-
contemporary with him running for, well, shortly after it. I believe it was 2002.
I
when
think
an
the
Inconvenient
race was
Truth-
over. I thought it was over.
Yeah,
by
but
the time
I-
they aired anything.
But I
related
think
to-
Inconvenient Truth came out around 2002, 2003. And Inconvenient Truth, you know, a little bit of it was hyperbolic, but at the same time, a good chunk of the message was sincere and legitimate and needed to be considered. And so, like, Matt Parker and Trey Stone made this whole episode making fun of him because he was saying the sky was falling. And then years later, they came back and Man-Bear-Pig was real in their show.
Yeah. I
Okay.
don't really have a hot take on that. I mean, I thought it was fair game and funny as shit. It was 2006, so it was whatever.
Yeah.
It was plenty of time had passed, and it was South Park. I don't know.
Yeah.
It didn't bother me.
But I guess maybe what I'm saying is don't get me wrong. There are many cases where both sides are wrong is a legitimate argument. But I feel like the general stance that both sides are equivalent in credibility and dishonesty is fundamentally broken. And I'm not saying that any one particular side is right universally in the long run than any other side. But I do think that the argument in general that both sides are equivalent is fundamentally broken because it creates a false equivalence when there isn't one.
Well, I think they're right. I mean, I do. I mean, if you watched the Duggar what the hell is this
I have
series called? Oh god, so good.
Yeah.
It's mostly about the church.
Yeah.
Behind that, right? But it made me think. I think it was watching that because there's a lot of grooming that happens of young men to be part of the army, the Christian army, in that. It's like, I hope you get like a Facebook warning for the stream. We've hit everything.
Yeah.
But like there's all this footage of them training up these like young kids, like to indoctrinate them into basically being warriors and to breed and all this stuff, right? But it occurs to me like they know that means that group understands the power. They believe in the power of raising and injecting views into people.
Yeah.
And so when they say the public school is turning children against parents, or the public school is grooming children to be weirdos, they're right. I mean, from their worldview, that's exactly what we're doing. Like, I will corrupt those kids and like, no, that's not. Like that's exactly what's happening. Like they're not wrong. Like they should be afraid. Like everything that they think is happening and everything they believe it to be true and sacrosanct, whatever.
But that's like saying
is being taken away.
But that's like this idea that teaching evolution is equivalent to teaching creationism. Do you believe that?
Do I think that but I think that the fear, if you said the schools are turning people against God, I wouldn't say you're being crazy. I'd say, yeah, exactly. That's 100% what's happening.
But
right? I'm not saying they're wrong. I mean,
I guess my issue is that if you can't like by that standard, okay, that every group should fear what's being taught in schools, then we should teach creationism in school. Do you think that's
Right.
legitimate?
Well, I mean, I think they think that. I mean, yeah, I think that again. I'm saying what the reason I find equivalence is because what they're saying is internally consistent. They're saying we need to bring God back into the schools. You're turning children against us. You're defeating all of our.
I mean, I know.
You're exposing children.
I'm sure Jeffrey Dahmer was it was internally consistent.
Yeah.
It doesn't
well,
mean that we should value his opinion,
right? But
in the
but
public
at the end of the day-
discourse.
But at the end of the day, if it means that the reason you find them to be evil is because ultimately they believe in God, because that's that's the font from which all of this disconnect emerges.
No,
that's why.
I think that really what my whole point in this entire discussion is saying is that if you ignore external inputs universally, that there's no way you can be included in the public discourse on the whole. And I think that when you take things like creationism and militias and fascism and Nazism and pretty much anything that's repugnant is fundamentally refusing to recognize certain scientific, social, factual truths, and the inability to allow yourself to be judged externally on some level by rational people, I think is the problem. And I don't necessarily think we're wrong for saying that's not equivalent.
Yeah, but if you put, we have to put like creationism aside, because that's a different issue, right? I mean, that's if you are a believer in creationism, like I don't really know how to even approach that argument. But take like something like militias, like the other side isn't saying we want to be fascists, we want to have militias. They're saying we don't want you in charge of parenting our kids, and then our interpretation of that is they want to be fascists.
Well,
I mean, what we say they're saying and what they're saying are different. But there's a fundamentally different argument here, in that one group is saying we don't want factually accurate information presented to our children, and the other side is saying we believe factually accurate information should be presented to all children. And I don't see that as equivalent. There's some, I don't know that any side is saying we don't want facts. They're saying that we want these facts. These are facts. Well, there's a lot of facts that you're like, well, you can't just give the fact. You've got
you look at the Florida curriculum thing that's saying, oh, well, we have to teach that slaves got skills because they were slaves.
Right, but I mean, they're going to say, well, that's factually correct, and they can provide all the documentation in the world, but it's out of context. It's not. It doesn't tell. There's a lot of issues with that, but one of the issues is not that it is factually incorrect. One of the issue is that that's not the standard you need to use for whether to include something. That's insufficient. It's interesting, but it's not enough.
I agree. But you're. I guess what I'm saying is I'm having difficulty here because I'm not arguing against the notion that there should be some kind of universal standard, like that we approach, like schools with and facts with and things like that. But like, you can't just say, well, they believe so-and-so, so that should be part of the discussion. I don't think don't forget, I'm having to play devil's advocate here.
I know you. I mean, what I'm saying is that the kinds of arguments you're making, the other side can make in exactly the same way. Because it comes down to some very basic moral and philosophical beliefs about humanity and what's right and what's wrong, that from which emanate the things that emanate this force that makes us cringe at certain things and not cringe at other things.
I'm not arguing that that's not true. What I'm arguing is that there are cases where both sides can make this argument and one has a more logical, rational, and intellectually supported case for the side that they have, and pretending that the other side is as legitimate just because they have an opinion is not rational.
Let's take a super irrational one, like the vaccine kills you.
Yes.
The clot shot.
Yes.
So I know several people who were anti-vax in the sense that they thought the risk-benefit wasn't there.
Okay.
I don't think that's correct. I don't really have an issue with that. I mean, the FDA has 300 pages of crap you can read about how they weren't sure either when they did the EUA.
Yeah.
It was a judgment call. There's plenty of physicians who would have told, like a young, healthy person, I don't know, you're probably fine, don't do it.
Yeah.
The balance of physicians would have said, take it. The balance of studies said it's a good idea. Virtually every organization said it was a good idea. There are still plenty of people out there who, they just were like, I don't know, I'm afraid of it mentally, or my doctor said my risk is fine, or I read this one researcher who's worried about this one side effect. There's certainly certain side effects that the FDA put in the EUA, like we don't know if this will happen, we don't know if this will happen, we don't know if it could make this work. Anyway, so there's a small slice of things which are what I would call rational objections.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's this other, far away from that, there's this crazy bullshit.
Yeah.
That's out there that we see. I don't know why I see it. I see it because I go on places like Gab and whatnot.
Yeah.
That I just don't know how much of that. I know that there are people that believe that. Don't get me wrong. But I think a lot of that is damn bot influence. I think it's the same way if you looked up Mother Earth news. I don't know what the left-wing wacko conspiracy theories are because I don't get exposed to them because I don't go to those sites. But whatever that shit is, crazy, chakra science stuff or whatever, they say conservatives are doing, or there's secretly militaries forming in your backyard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how much that's real. I agree with you. That would be maddening to me if I thought those were really people posting it. But I can't believe it's not just damn bots. With the super crazy, batshit crazy stuff.
I have legitimate people I went to high school with who have posted some of the craziest shit you can possibly imagine. And yeah. I truly believe they believe it.
Right.
So I get
lizard people and whatnot.
Well, not not necessarily lizard people, but Anthony Fauci is out to poison Americans and stuff like that. Commonly, not even marginally. There is probably I'd say a good quarter of Americans who think Anthony Fauci is a villain. And I don't think that there's any logical argument that supports that.
Well, I like to stick with slightly crazier shit. Because I think that's crazy, but it's not crazy enough. Crazy is
okay.
That shit crazy stuff is underground people taking children, or Hillary feeds on babies
or adrenochrome and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, which Fauci, that particular example, I'm happy to put that in the 0.01% category.
No,
that whatever they were paying in the gain of function research, somewhere somebody has a memo that says we're also looking at this particular function. How do we change it?
Rand Paul, a sincere.
I know he's all on that. Right.
He thinks that Anthony Fauci deserves a 5-year prison sentence.
Yeah, I believe I'm not saying. It's in the. I can imagine a world in a 0.00001% possibility where 10 years from now somebody discovers that there should have been more oversight on what the U.S. was funding at Wuhan. I think to me that's a different level of crazy than Hillary is feeding on infants to stay immortal. Like, I don't think they're both crazy, but like there is a very big difference to me. Like one of them is like Bigfoot. Like
In
Bigfoot's in that category too.
in
Like
Ja-
I
in
can allow that there's a Bigfoot.
I just want to
you know?
go one step further.
Like it's-
In January of this year, a survey, let me see who it was by the Trafalgar Group, surveyed Americans and found that 52% believed that Congress should investigate Fauci's inconsistent testimony as well as his actions in managing the pandemic.
That's a fairly low bar, though. I mean, what does that mean? That's just saying they think that he should have done better, right? I can believe half of people would think that.
Okay. I just want to point out that this is a public servant who came out and basically gave out the best scientific information at any given point in time, and people think he should be investigated with no evidence of any kind of stuff. Like,
Yeah,
okay.
but if you ask, I don't know, 50-50. I mean, I don't. There's a lot of questions about that. Like, do you think so and so should be investigated? That might be 50% of America. I don't know. I mean, that's not. I think that is silly that people think that. I agree.
Yeah.
But like that doesn't blow me away.
Okay,
Like,
but
I
let's
bet
go.
Any political figure, if you ask the country, what do you think of this guy? Like 50% of the people would probably say, I don't know. Like,
Well, but that's just it. Like, this is part of the problem, is that there are entire news organizations that are attempting to, like paint certain. They're okay. So one of the funniest things was, I used to always laugh back in the LiveJournal days because the conservative people would accuse me of using Alinsky tactics all the time. Saul Alinsky wrote Rules for Radicals, and there were certain things in there which were, identify an individual, associate them with the problem, blah, 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 right? And yet, like, what I found more often than not was the reason that the conservatives hated Alinsky tactics is because that's exactly what they used when confronting their enemies. And that's what they've used, with Fauci. They don't like the circumstances, so they've tied it to an individual and begun, a smear campaign against that individual. It's akin to Hillary's use of a private server where they never minded, what's his name? Jared, Trump's son-in-law and Trump's daughter used like private, like email transfer to do a lot of their business for the U.S. government. They never said a goddamn thing about it. The trick was, let's identify this person we don't like and let's associate negativity with them. Okay. And I mean, I get that in certain ways, but I fundamentally think there's a different circumstance here. And I think there's a different set of like goalposts here. And it's the same reason that, they keep investigating the Biden laptop. They keep doing Hillary Benghazi investigations. They keep accusing people of committing crimes and breaking rules and then never able to find anything. And yet at the same time, they say that that's all that the January 6th commission was a political attack on someone when, hundreds and thousands of people have been convicted of crimes, actual crimes with evidence from January 6th. So my issue here is that you can sit here and say there's equivalence in these two circumstances, but I'm not sure that's a legitimate argument when things that go to court and stuff demonstrate that these are fundamentally different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, how is it different? I mean, January 6th was a crime. A lot of people committed a crime, and that's being investigated and found out, right?
Yeah.
And Trump, there's a bunch of noise made about taxes, right? That all came out. There was nothing. They just stopped reporting on it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody goes after stuff and sees what they get. And sometimes you get a hit, and sometimes you don't. And sometimes it's clearly, like January 6th, it was a lot of ambiguity other than for political, like, posturing to get votes. I mean, it was pretty unambiguously an issue. I mean, you do have people on both sides saying that was a problem. It's not like that's a universally partisan thing. There's
Well, not
certainly
anymore.
conservative
Not
voices who
the conservative
yeah,
voices, all but the ones that are being,
yeah.
you know, ostracized by the Republican Party, are saying. I mean, the only ones that are like you look at Liz Cheney, who said there was a problem there, and because of it, she got ousted from the party.
You know, I mean, Trump is not factually wrong when he says all this sound fury signifying nothing, right? I mean, everything came up blanks. Now, of course, the dominoes are starting to fall, but I mean, you'll see if any of that ends up meaning anything. I mean,
But
Georgia may end up being
again,
the
like I
place
think
that gets him, but
I think my issue here is that it's fundamentally dishonest to try like I don't think there's equivalence here. And I think that courts and research and credibility and all that are on my side on this. And just as I can't look at someone who says, you know, and I'm sorry to go back to creationism, but like just as like I can't look at someone who speaks about creationism and someone who speaks about evolution as being on any kind of the same page or opposite sides of the same coin. You know, like if someone were to say, I don't believe evolution happened exactly like you said, and I've got this evidence for that, that's one thing, right? That's a different argument than I just don't believe you. And I think we're seeing a lot of these styles of arguments going on in politics where one side is presenting their I just don't believe you argument as if it is equally rational as someone who is bringing forth a bunch of evidence and saying, I believe this because of A, B, C, and D. And so I get frustrated because I
think you're I mean, again, without it, we try to find a specific example. I doubt usually you'll find many issues where the response is, I don't believe you. I think that's just what you're hearing the response to be. And you're not understanding what the counter argument is.
Do you think there is a rational argument that Donald Trump won the 2020 election?
No. Now let's talk about the politicians that would. I mean, I don't know of one. Certainly haven't seen one. So there's a handful of politicians. Let's talk about like Giuliani.
Yeah.
That like it's difficult to imagine what rational thought there was about his thought process. But what he's never said is that I just don't believe you. What he's done is provided evidence. I mean, it's been wrong evidence, but his position hasn't been like I just don't believe you. He's got evidence that isn't correct. And it gets pieced apart, and then he will explain why the piecing apart was done incorrectly. And then they will piece that apart, and then he will explain why that also was done incorrectly or was corrupted with more what he believes to be evidence, and people will get tired of it and move on. But at no point has the argument ever been, I just don't believe you.
I think
there's always evidence for everything.
But I think that is fundamentally dishonest. I can have evidence that, you know, me killing my children tonight, you know, I can believe that I heard God and said that blah blah blah. You know, like there is evidence and there is evidence. Okay, but like there was as late as last year, 70% of Republicans said that they do not believe that Joe Biden was the legitimate winner of the 2020 election. But there is no accepted evidence of any kind.
There is accepted evidence by 70% of people.
I guess I just live in a different world.
I'm saying you just said that, again, if you took that 70% of people who said they don't believe it, and you asked them why, they would give you some evidence, and that they consider that to be evidence. So what that means is that there's a body of evidence that's accepted by 70% of the people. Their position isn't that they just don't.
I dispute that. And I will say why. I do not think that most of the people who are saying that Biden did not win the election need evidence to say that.
Well, anytime you're getting an answer from a politician, and this is 100% true on both
I'm not
sides,
talking about
sometimes-
politicians. I'm
some-
talking
I'm
about
saying
rank. I'm talking about rank and file human beings.
Okay, well, I didn't know who the population was, but I mean, if you're trying to appease, trying to get elected, both sides might say anything. But I mean, if you, I dispute that you would ever go to one of those people and say why. What you're going to get is an assortment of either I have this evidence, or I heard these things, or so and so who I trust told me.
Yeah.
But all of those are exactly the same sort of
And yet
that we use
you
to
can
come to
see
conclusions.
interviews with Trump supporters, okay, where they'll be like, "Oh, well, if this were the case, would you believe it? Would you disbelieve? Oh, yes, no, obviously, if that was true." And then they will demonstrate, well, this was true, and they'll be like, "Well, it doesn't change my opinion." My issue here is that there is a fundamentally different understanding of what can be and is factual, and pretending that that the belief in something is provides equivalent credibility is fundamentally broken. I think that you have to be willing to say there are certain people who will not listen to facts. And those people's opinions are not like, it's, but that's the problem here is that's
here's what happens.
Okay.
Right. Sorry, I cut you off. Go on.
Yeah. Can I get another glass of wine? I'll be right back. I need a glass of wine. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
By the way, more people have been listening to this
I know.
discussion than have watched my fucking game stream all night long.
They're gonna see if we drink enough to make it really ugly. So here again, because I don't really busy myself with politics a bunch, I can't do much of an actual fact. But let's take a ballot. There's some shit about there was a truckload of ballots.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're making a fanciful scenario.
Yeah.
So person A shows a video of a truck arriving and people unloading it.
Yeah.
It says, "Look, they're unloaded ballots. Here's evidence." And person B says, "Well, no, that's blank printer paper. Obviously, that happens every day. You moron. It's just printer paper."
Yeah.
And then the other person says, "Well, no, the printer paper boxes are not blue. These have blue lids. Blue lids are on ballot boxes. Here's evidence." Then person B says, "Well, that printer paper came from a different store." And then person A says, "Well, I looked into it. That store didn't have the blue lids that day. So then where'd they come from?" And this goes on until everybody gets tired of it. And both sides leave convinced they've presented all the facts, and the other side is just a moron.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not true of literally everything, but that happens all the time. And that's how we get this. I think that's how people get convinced that they're only seeing the facts, their facts, through a lens of them being facts, and the other person's facts as being things they refuted.
Again,
and both people do that, and then they end up leaving the day, and they're being like, "Well, I showed every evidence I got, so I don't know what's wrong with that person."
And my argument there is that my point is that you can set objective standards for what is quantifiable evidence, and the question is that when evidence is presented, are you willing to submit to good evidence?
Well,
And-
okay.
and my- Go ahead.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I don't want to step on you again. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, it's no worries. Go ahead.
I thought of a real example. Like
Yeah.
a real, actual, factual example.
Yeah.
That's like probably a hot button example, but it will work. Like school masking.
Yeah.
So, I think it was even your district
Yeah.
put out a report that showed the infection rates in masked classrooms, masked systems, and unmasked systems. And it was literally identical. And yet, everybody I knew who was pro-masking pointed out how the mask systems were doing well. And everybody who I knew was against masking was pointing out how the unmasked systems were not doing any differently. So it's like there's evidence that comes out, but people just take the pieces of it they need. So both sides get evidence. Everybody is presenting facts. They're just coming to different conclusions on them.
In certain ways, I can agree with what you're saying on that issue, because there were a lot of reports that were kind of, on and off the fence about that. Okay. However, most of the the qualitative freaking, mass studies found that masks on the whole produce positive results.
I'm not disputing that. I'm not.
Yeah.
Because I'm not. I'm just saying that it's easy because people would repost the same document on both sides and make the point how the other side wasn't looking back. So that was an actual thing in my feed where I had people on both sides sharing the exact same spreadsheet of data, because blindness to it's just the information selectivity of the mind is very powerful.
I'm not going to argue that doesn't happen. Okay. Obviously, there are certain things that are, all we got to do is look at SALT research on heart disease over the past 20 years, right? Research on sodium and heart disease has been back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And, people are saying, well, okay, if you've got, now they're just boiling down to salt doesn't necessarily give you a heart attack, but if you've got heart issues, you should probably reduce your sodium intake, right? Regardless of whether one side or the other was correct, we kind of have to go with what do we know right now?
Right.
And we can't look at the option for future studies as if they are guaranteed to flip-flop back and forth. That's not the way it works.
Right, but you can make a good evidence-based case. I'm sure I don't really know anything about the subject, but I'm sure. But knowing a lot about how behavioral data, medical data might work, I'm sure the way medical data works is you find the studies that support what the conclusion against virtually anything. I don't care what it is. You can find some studies that say this will instantly kill you.
Yeah.
And amid a sea of studies that maybe don't say that.
Right.
And then all you have to do is go find the studies that don't agree, and then you're going to over-scrutinize them. Well, this was only in India. Their diet is different. This was in people who see more than 8 hours of sun. You can always discredit any study. The methodology was wrong. It wasn't double-blind. The selection of subjects was wrong. It was in the wrong climate. It was too small of a population. It was self-reported by patients. Like doctors there are biased. And then you just tink off the ones that don't agree, and you're left with, you have this very concise, evidence-based conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody else can come along and craft their own conclusion out of the same blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And both sides think they're just following the evidence, and the other side isn't. That's what I guess all I'm saying is that they're not, it's easy to fall into the trap into thinking that the other side is just going, nuh-uh. But they might very well be exhaustively going over evidence in a different way.
And my whole thing is that, do not get me wrong, I am aware of that concept. However, okay, we're looking at drastically different cases in certain political environments. For instance, okay, let's look at vaccine safety, right? There is no logical and rational study that said that the COVID vaccines were less helpful than they were harmful. Do you agree with that or not?
Probably is true. I mean, I don't really have
Okay.
a code. In terms of the way you put it, that's true. Where some concern about it came was VME, which is vaccine-mediated enhancement.
Yeah.
Which is a problem that they had trying to develop vaccines for freaking the other coronavirus.
Yeah.
Whatever it's called, not SARS. There's another one. Vaccine-mediated enhancement is where the vaccine makes you get sicker when you actually finally get the virus.
Right.
And the emergency use authorization for the vaccine said, this is generally a problem. We think it's not going to happen because of the way we're manufacturing it and blah, 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 but we will not know until 6 months later. But the benefit outweighs the cost.
Yeah.
So that was a rational, legitimate scientific fear among people who understand vaccines because they saw it happen the last time they tried to do a coronavirus vaccine. So that was 6 months later, it never happened. So to that respect, there was no studies. But if you're asking like on day one of the EUA, were there any vaccine scientists who were like, I'm not sure about this? The answer is there sure were, and they were very credible people. But the majority of people were like, you better use it because otherwise we're going to be screwed because they thought 10% of the population was going to die.
Right.
Right. But generally speaking, I have to say correct. I mean, it's largely, there aren't a lot of studies on that have any indication that.
But let me kind of take this angle on you, okay? Because I feel like you have a very nuanced opinion of that, and it largely boils down to the opinion of credible intellectuals with great knowledge expressing an opinion about possibility that has not been tested yet, and recognizing that there will be evidence in the future that either confirms or denies that approach.
Right.
I do not feel that 80% of vaccine denial was anywhere near that.
Well, I think it was way downstream of it. I think that a few, I would imagine that a few dissident voices, it's in the same vein as like 5G, that you can go find hundreds or thousands of studies of ionization of tissue in 5G by like freaking Stanford or Harvard. Like, it's very well studied and known to be a potential issue, not thought to be an issue in practice by 99% of people, but there's a lot of things that are going to look 10 years down the line to see what's going on. It's not just going to start frying people, but there's like, it's a legitimate, there's lots and lots of effort being put into studying longitudinally that same kind of thing. So there's a few, when one of those little voices leaks out, it's kind of like the telephone game. By the time it gets to like the guy who runs the bait shop, it's turned into like, you'll grow a third arm.
Yeah.
I think the originating voices are when people who don't need to be hearing science, because science is not absolute. As soon as you think something's absolute, you're religion, not a science. That they can't process the information to understand what it means. So they tell it slightly wrong to somebody else, and then to somebody else, and then it turns into a sound clip that's been further extracted on a media, and then everybody has all these crazy ass ideas. I mean, I think that's what happens, but the origin of the grain of sand that makes that pearl is some little squeak of a legitimate dissident science.
And I will
voices of sciences are valuable.
I will argue slightly differently, and I'll argue it in the angle of racism. Okay? I think that there are a lot of people who legitimately oppose affirmative action because they believe it is racist. However, I believe a much larger percentage of people are opposed to affirmative action because it provides benefit to a race they oppose. Now, what happens is that someone says, "Oh no, there was this Chinese student who could have gotten in, but because of affirmative action, a black guy got in instead, and that's wrong." Okay? And devoid of the context of the entire argument, faux intellectuals think I'm providing a neutral angle to a troublesome issue with nothing but scientific basis. The problem is this resonates with people whose desires are less noble. Okay? And in that particular case, you get people who are like, "Oh no, you're right. It's all about that Chinese guy, right?" When really what it boils down to is that a lot of people didn't like that black people were getting a foot up because they had been oppressed for hundreds and hundreds of years. Similarly, I think that if we were to do some kind of study on this, it would confirm what I'm saying here. The vast majority of people who were opposed to the COVID virus had little to no understanding of why anyone would be opposed to it. They just didn't like being told that something was good for them, and they especially didn't like it coming from the left.
I think that's definitely a big factor.
Now,
so in the case of like COVID, like vaccine refusal,
yes,
I guess maybe you could take my response in terms of like people who believe it didn't work versus like people who are freedomists or whatever. Like,
right.
I'm not going to be told what to take as a medicine,
right?
Or I don't trust you to give me some medicine.
But at the same time, I don't. There are so many people who are unwilling to listen. Like, they still fight against the idea that 1 million Americans died of COVID. And they're unwilling to listen to the reality that our nation suffered a major pandemic and that ignorance of vaccines and refusal to participate in safety measures cost probably 350,000 American lives.
Right, but their perspective is still going to be that they're just showing you evidence, not that they're being obstinate, right? And it's going to be the same kind of chain as that truck example. It's just going to be about how hospitals report, and what this form said in this hospital, and what this district said, and how this county did it, and how that
And my point is that for us to combat this natural prejudice that exists within our system, okay, we have to take into account that there are right sides that we should listen to. We have to allow ourselves the right to be swayed by experts and intellectuals. The problem here is that we've got a large portion of our population that do not want to be swayed by intellectual arguments. And
it's
so they will...
American, it's British people as well, I've noticed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
when you talk about the COVID, I've noticed, there are some British people that I've spoken to who are oblivious, and they say COVID doesn't exist. It never existed in the first place.
Yeah.
Obviously, they don't know the truth. They can't open their eyes and just, accept it.
And so my basic point here is not that we shouldn't be equally skeptical of both sides' arguments. My entire point is that if we pretend that each side has equivalent values in approaching a situation, we are fundamentally harming the discussion in its infancy. If we assume that the people, if we automatically assume that everything about affirmative action occurs only in the argument that takes place in front of the Supreme Court, we're missing a good chunk of what's going on there. And there's more going on. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't listen to opposing views or anything like that, but I think there is a fundamental flaw in assuming equivalence of intention and intellectual attitude when that is not in evidence.
Well, I think what I was trying to do with those thought experiments was show that they're using evidence. I mean, from the perspective of the opposing side, they're absolutely using evidence. You're just not listening to it. They can cite evidence for why the COVID numbers aren't right. They can cite evidence why the ballot numbers weren't right. They can show you video footage. They have an answer for every. They have a piece of evidence for every one you have.
Okay, but here's the question: when do we? What is the point? I mean, somebody has evidence that the world's only 6,000 years old. It's the Bible. Should we take that seriously in our classrooms? Should we take that seriously in our courtrooms? There's a point where we have to say this is not an intellectual argument anymore.
Well, no. When you get to religion, it's not an intellectual argument. That's the entire point. Those issues have to be separated. That's why, because I mean, that's obviously an a priori issue with facts that supersede truths that supersede all mortal fact.
Yeah.
There is no solution to that. The only solution to that is for the thought process to go away through just generations.
Right.
But when we're talking about stuff like vaccine deniers, they're operating on I believe this evidence. Like I found 3 doctors that agree with me.
And
just because 7 doctors agree with you, that's not how you make decisions. You don't just always go with the majority. You listen to the facts. Right? But that's what they're going to say.
But at the same time, there are tiers of credibility. One doctor saying something means one thing. 10 doctors saying something means another. An entire prestigious medical foundation saying something is another. And we have to recognize that just because individuals say something, that doesn't mean that it's credible. And we've got to be able to argue that logically. And I feel that for instance, there was that whole climate change models aren't accurate argument that we heard for decades from the right, when every climate change model has in general come to reflect.
Depends on what you mean by accurate, right? I mean, I understand the reasoning here. I mean, no, of course they're not. They're wrong. They're all right. They could never be right. It's like forecasting a cloud.
Right.
And it kind of went to the east, but it's not the same shape. I mean, of course they're wrong. It's just more interpretation, right? I mean, they're going to say, well, yeah, the model said it should have gone up 3 degrees. It only went up 2. And you're going to say, well, the model's right because it went up. And they're going to say the model's wrong because it was 50% off.
But do you think that those who are arguing against climate change have the same credible and scientific foundation as those who are proposing that it is a real and persistent
I think there are people who argue for and against climate change who don't know anything that what they're talking about. And I think among the people who have some kind of vested interest in understanding the science, it won't be hard to Google up very prestigious scientists who disagree and way more who agree. There's not a dearth of information on the other side.
Anyway, so making a change to climate change is it's inevitable, and if they were so worried about it, they could have done this years ago anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, I believe what the consensus is, but I don't think it would be impossible to find somebody who disagreed, who was a credentialed and valid source of information.
And see, that's just it. Like,
I would be shocked if that was the case, because there's always somebody out there. That's how a lot of the big stuff happens in science.
But fundamentally, the credibility gap between large groups of studied individual and peer-reviewed science there is a gargantuan gap between 5 people disagreeing with the consensus and, 95% of all members of a climate, consortium getting together and saying this is a real problem.
No. Right, but it's different than saying they have no evidence and they're just going and they don't use the same thought process and saying that they're using evidence.
No. You're missing my. Okay, again, like you'll always find.
I'm trying to attack the false equivalence idea. What I'm saying is that there's not. It's the same junk. I mean, you would be hard pressed to name a fact that the consensus of science said was true 100 years ago that remains.
I mean,
I can't think of any science. I don't care if it's atomic structure, freaking gravity. Like if you go back enough, like freaking the way the sun works, the way the body works, the way the brain works, the way.
But at the same time,
like,
at any point in time in modern history, okay, where religion was not dominant over testing, okay, it is 99.999% of the time, it is better for you to go with the current scientific consensus than it is to go with an outlier.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with that.
If you're going to make a decision,
that's not what I'm saying is that you should follow.
Again, but like my point is, I get where you're coming from, that there will always be external voices. I'm not arguing with that. I guess what I'm saying is that the presence of an external voice does not invalidate the body of evidence. And the idea that a scientific community could come forward with 95% consensus and a body of evidence that is overwhelming and 5 people saying, no, that's not the case, is somehow equivalent seems completely alien to me.
If it wasn't that history wasn't riddled with that, like virtually every consensus, that's what my saying, go back 100 years, to give me any scientific consensus that ended up being right. The minority weirdo has always been the person that was like, yes, this is how it works now. Sorry, the atoms don't.
I disagree. We've known about climate change for over 100 years. We've known about no, the weirdos don't necessarily determine our future.
The way electrons work in an atom was settled, right? I mean, Newtonian physics was settled.
No. I'm gonna argue with you there. We had certain understandings of how electrons and protons and neutrons worked, but I don't think that there is anything there that people said, oh no, there can't be anything about quarks and muons and gluons.
I'm
right?
sure I disagree there. If you went back to the 80s and brought up to the average chemistry faculty anything related to quantum states or SPF orbitals or any of that modern understanding, it would be utter nonsense. And I don't want to make like a physical science analogy to a social science problems, but the point is that it is not irrational to say you can't always just follow the majority.
No. That's not what
we're warning you about a problem.
That's not what I'm saying at all. Okay, because I mean there are certain times, you look at things like DDT. DDT was publicly acceptable, but it is an outlier in the general scientific progress that we've made. And in general, at any point in time in history, in the last 150 years, well, we'll go 120 years, okay? If you were to choose the scientific consensus and peer-reviewed science, I postulate that you were 99.99% wiser to choose that angle than the outlier. There are certain outliers that obviously that's the way science works. Outliers will come, but and I'm not talking about popularity either. I'm talking about scientific consensus. For instance, let's look at the freaking cigarettes cause lung cancer thing, right? There was a whole drive that, oh, no, doctors like cigarettes, blah, blah, blah. But if you read the peer-reviewed science, even back to the 20s and 30s, they were saying there are health issues that this is causing. Not the public issues, not the popular issues. You couldn't take a vote but if you look at the peer-reviewed science and you challenged it, you are always wiser to choose the thing that is currently peer-reviewed and challenged and publicly accepted. Okay? So I guess my point in this is not that this is a popularity contest and whoever is the most popular gets it. My point is that you can't put an equivalence on, oh, well, a lot of doctors in the 50s thought that cigarettes were okay to smoke, because really those were freaking paid people, right?
I have to personally disagree with that, because my father went on a tirade in the 70s. And I was a child when he quit smoking because he had a giant fight with the hospital faculty over it. Because he was one of the people who was getting ostracized for wanting to get cigarettes, like on the anti-cigarette bandwagon. Forced like our whole family. He went to some convention and came back and forced like all the family to quit. Like everybody had to quit. Throw all the cigarettes out. Throw all the ashtrays out.
Yeah.
Had a big fight with Huntsville Hospital faculty over it.
Yeah.
And that was in the 70s.
I'm not arguing that. My point is that the peer-reviewed science by that point in time was very, very clear. There was no argument in peer-reviewed science, just like there was no argument about the COVID vaccine. And yet we had hospitals all over the place that were like, oh, no, you know, like certain doctors were like, oh, no, that's fine. You don't need to get a vaccine. I mean, it's okay, Chris. I'm sorry. I understand where you're coming from. Chris is like, I'm out of here. This is annoying.
No.
But my point continues to be that there is not an equivalence between people who are seeking knowledge and are willing to accept testing standards, being wrong, and people who just say, no, this is the way. There's a gargantuan difference in it, and I can't find equivalence there. And there's no equivalence between what's going on in right-wing media and what's going on in left-wing media. If you watch Rachel Maddow, you're not looking at someone like Tucker Carlson, who is just saying stuff and isn't willing to accept. Like if Rachel Maddow gets shown evidence that's contradictory to what she knows, she will listen to it. Tucker Carlson won't. These are fundamentally different attitudes on the concept of knowledge and exposition.
I'm not sure. I don't know who Rachel Maddow, I assume, is a left journalist.
Yes, she's on MSNBC, and she's the thing. So again, like I'm arguing that there are different standards for what knowledge is. And that
sometimes it's not even knowledge. Sometimes it's just stubbornness that they can't, change their viewpoint and they're just stuck in their ways.
Yeah.
It's just stubbornness.
I mean, yeah. But at the same time, like, it's also, there's a lot of ideological, like, for instance, there's plenty of right-wing ideas that as soon as a left-wing person proposes them, the right wing will vote against it. And yet, here is a prime example. Okay. Prior to 2016, opinions on Russia were highly polarized. The people on the left did not think that horribly about the Russians, and the people on the right were fundamentally opposed to them on every level. I had a personal friend who was opposed, a guy we went to high school with, who I got into a discussion with him, and he's like, I can't understand how Barack Obama can treat Russia like they're not our dire enemies, like they're somebody that we can negotiate with. In 2016, when Trump was elected to office, right-wing opinions of Russia changed drastically. And left-wing opinions, while they did dip a little bit, it was single-digit differences. Similarly, with the war in Syria, I think it was Clinton, when Clinton did missile attacks on Syria, suddenly opinions on Syria changed drastically on the right wing, whereas opinions on the left wing stayed reasonably stable on Syria. Whereas when I believe Bush attacked them, again, single-digit changes in left-wing opinion, double-digit changes in right-wing opinion. So my point is that there are a lot of things that happen where people just align their beliefs with what is politically expedient. And it is not an equivalent reaction from both sides of the equation. And I get why people want to believe that there is some centrist, both sides are bad kind of thing. But I do believe that studying this clearly demonstrates that there is a quest for knowledge from one side and a quest for ideology in many cases from the other side.
Right, but if you talk to the other side about this, I'm sure with a little bit of Google foo, they can find a study that they can use to make exactly the same point. You know, it sounds like you have a data point that you've treated as a fixed universal truth. And there's probably, you know, a freaking 1,000 studies on public opinion that could be picked apart that show different things. I mean, I don't know what's right or what's wrong. I don't know. Maybe they all show the same thing. But the other side isn't just what a thinking person on the other side is going to do is say like, well, show me your study. Let me show you my study. Let me see what's wrong with your study. I'm going to use facts to defeat you. You are just an ideologue.
In many ways, that's the case. But if you think that, for instance, Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to be arguing on the same level as Katie Porter, I think there's a fundamental flaw there. Katie Porter walks into the... Well, but that's just it. What you're saying is that all it takes is for somebody to have an opposing study and they can make an equally credible argument. And I'm disputing that.
What you're saying is that you want to take a single person on the opposing side, and like you're taking Marjorie Taylor Greene and taking a good example for the argument you're trying to make, and then trying to spread that across the entire population, right?
No.
I mean, because she's obviously like a whack job. I mean, like, you know.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you a very serious question. How many Democratic whack jobs are currently in office?
I have no idea. They probably don't seem like whack jobs to me. I'd have to ask.
How many can you name? I can name 4 Republican whack jobs right off the bat.
You'd have to name the Democratic whack jobs. I would have to ask a person who sees Democratic whack. I mean, don't see those people.
Well, and
you'd have to message like somebody who hunts on Facebook or something.
But that's
they
just
can really
it.
Tell
Like,
us who the people are.
that's my point, is that I can come up with objective standards by which I consider a person to be a whack job. Like, I can tell you, this is why I think that person is a whack job. This is why I think that, and I can come up with a standard that I will apply all over, like, everybody, right? When we're like,
well, I mean, I would guess they would probably say, I mean, that's a good question. Who do we find the right most vilifies in Congress? I mean,
AOC. AOC.
Sanders is up there. Certainly
AOC.
AOC.
Do you think AOC on any level is less intellectual, is as anti-intellectual and insincere as what you see from people like Marjorie Taylor Greene?
I will not. I don't want to answer that because I don't know Marjorie Taylor Greene. She looks like a whack job to me. She's made extremely stupid statements.
Yeah.
But all of them have resonated with her base. So I have no clue how to evaluate her. But on the surface of the media presentation that I see of those two people, AOC seems more grounded. I'm not going to say intellectual. I mean, they're both exactly what Congress people should be. They're kind of just from their districts. But no, I regard MTG as certainly more extreme and irrational of the two. But being politicians, I can allow that she's got a thing she's doing. But.
So here's what I'm gonna say. Okay, and I know you're gonna disagree with me. It's fine. Okay, I think that there is a certain level of that there is a standard that can be analyzed and said, okay, this is what I think we should be looking for into intellectual discussion. As such, I have
it is done.
My problem here is that people like Tommy Tuberville are presented as sincere intellectual viewpoints. And I think everyone who actually has any kind of objective understanding of what an intellectual is knows that Tommy Tuberville is not that. We're dealing with a situation where we have a large number of know-nothings, prejudiced people, and outright bigots who put forward faux intellectual arguments, knowing full well they won't stand up to any kind of scrutiny. And they're not doing it because they're trying to make a sincere debate or argument or anything like that. They're doing it because they're going to try to resonate with an existing prejudice, bias, or anti-intellectual concept. That is much different than somebody like Katie Porter or AOC, who come out and say, I need to meet, I have to put forward a good argument. I have to put forward a rational argument that would convince somebody of what is right and wrong. I do not think we're seeing that on both sides of the equation. I think it is fundamentally flawed to present the argument as, well, A says this and B says this, so it must be in the middle. That's wrong. It's fundamentally wrong. Just like it's wrong to say, well, people say there's evolution and people say there's creationism, or people say the vaccine works and people say the vaccine doesn't work. There's no argument there. It's just people saying stuff because it resonates with people that will agree with them. Okay? I do not feel that people like AOC and Katie Porter are speaking in a way so that their people will agree with them. They are legitimately putting forward arguments that should convince people who do not have an opinion. And I think that's a fundamentally different concept. Just as arguing vaccines don't work and arguing vaccines do work does. I think one side is sincere And I think one side is just looking for any evidence it can find that their beliefs are true. And
right. So
go ahead.
yeah, I mean, I think the issue is you don't argue with dumb people on your side. Like when you have an argument, like among high school friends or whatever, like might create that is like they've said something ridiculous, and it has prompted discussion, and you're like, I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Whereas if somebody who like is, I don't know, dumb is that's not the right word. Let's say like a non-intellectual person who you fundamentally agree with says something that maybe isn't right, it's not going to prompt you probing that response. You're not going to end up thinking like, good Lord, what has this person been? Because you're not going to engage in that way, right? Like if I look up dumb quotes from AOC, I mean, you could certainly find lots of evidence that say, hey, that other side could use and say, hey, this person doesn't know what they're doing. I'm like, what are we talking about, you know? Taking back she's got trying to take back all 3 chambers of Congress, or I mean, there's like it's not. I don't think it's as different because you're only seeing one side of it. I don't think they're right. I just don't think the thought process is that different.
And see, that's just it. I fundamentally disagree. And I learned a lot of this because I don't know if you remember, but I used to host these debates on my Facebook. That where my whole attitude was, we're going to argue ideas. We're not going to confront people. Here's the rules for how to engage and blah, blah, blah. And I did all these things. And what I found was that there were people who did not want to participate in that in a sincere manner.
Right, but they were always the opposing view, right? You didn't have 2 people on the same side in the debate.
There were some people who I did not feel engaged correctly, and I confronted them directly. Okay?
Right.
However, what I found more often than not was there was a large, and this is highly coordinated with Trump's ascension, although it's also tied with Gamergate. Okay? There was an effort to give people busy work. I'm going to say nuh-uh, and I want you to argue your side, right? And then when you say that, I'm going to move the goalposts and say nuh-uh again. And I know that you argue that's not what people do earlier. And I'm not one to necessarily present anecdotal evidence, but that is actually what I encountered when presented with a lot of people. There was always somebody who was like, oh yeah, well, you've got to prove this and I don't have to prove shit. And my argument continues to be that while it might seem that there is a degree of equivalence in political adversaries because they both want to argue in favor of what they have to say, I think that it is not an equivalent desire to rationally negotiate with the other side. More times than not, my goal was to speak clearly, to provide quality arguments that might convince people of something. And that is not what I got from observation. And it's not what I get today when I see stuff like, people being interviewed at Trump rallies and things like that. The desire is not, oh, if you believe this, then you must believe this. And people going, oh, yes. It's people saying whatever they can say to follow their ideological goals. And I feel like that's a fundamentally different situation. And I dispute that there is an equivalence here. And I disagree that the goal is to find one study that agrees with you. That's not what most people want. Most people want lots of studies that agree with them. But you'll find some people who are like, oh no, I got this one. That's all I need. And so I get what you're saying. And in many ways, I have agreed with you in the past. But right now, I do not feel that is the case. So anyway, it's 4 a.m. I've kept you up till 4 a.m.
Good night. Thanks
Good night.
For the advice earlier on the room.
Yeah.
I'll owe you
No
quality
worries.
stuff.
And I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Yeah, it was fun. This was great. And
Yeah.
I am gonna look at when Lori gets back. I'll look at or when she gets reachable tomorrow, like maybe coming up for the weekend.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And if
Just
you
don't know
need,
when she gets back, so that's the thing. So.
and as always, if you want to crash here, you're welcome to it.
Sweet.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Yep.
Later.
Have a good night.
Light.
Good night. So I still have people watching. That surprises me greatly. Normally people don't watch this long.
Poor Chaldean. We used to dance by the fountain in the bazaar.
Also, your 47 rogue on world. I actually have multiple characters here. I'm doing. This is my seasons character. I don't know why I agreed to do a seasons character. It feels kind of stupid at this point in time. Ah! Nice. Where I need to go and maybe get.
People are still watching.
Say what?
Is it still surprising that people are still watching?
It is. It is. I'm surprised that there are still like. So I did. I streamed for some stuff tonight, and I had I had one person watching one stream, and then as soon as I started discussing stuff, it went up, and at one point I had 4 people on Facebook and 3 people on YouTube watching the whole discussion, and it never dropped. So
Something's obviously working.
well, and that's just it. Like, I've never had any problems discussing significant issues in public. My main problem came, especially in the Trump era, in that a lot of people wanted to debate me for stupid reasons. They wanted, I had this one friend I graduated high school with who was like, I want you and I to do a podcast where I talk about Trump and you talk about other things. And I was like, you don't have any interest at all about talking about anything sincere. And no, we will not be doing that.
What he meant to say was he wanted to talk about Trump and you're just supposed to sit there and listen.
Right. Well, the main thing is like, I had a lot of friends who were like, oh no, Trump is gonna drain the swamp. He's getting all the lobbyists and everything out of Washington, and he's getting in good people who, and then of course he had a bunch of crooks and all that kind of shit. And but like, it was so funny because one day she messaged me and she was like, okay, so I guess Trump didn't drain the swamp, but still it was better. And I was like, no, it was not better. And she still wanted to debate. And I was like, no, I will not be debating you. And that's another thing in general. Like, I've pondered getting into kind of debate circles and stuff like that because I feel like I'm a good speaker and I have a good attitude on a lot of these things. But my main issue is that the best decisions anyone can make are not based off of short arguments. They're based on a long, thoughtful processes over very complex situations. And you're not, like, if somebody presents you with new information while you're in a debate, unless you've already been presented with that information and have, like, thought up a response to it, you're not going to provide constructive response to it. You need to sit down. You need to think about it. You need to do some work on it. And so, like, there's been a million times where people have been like, we should do a debate podcast. And I'm like, I can't imagine anything more horrible than spending my time coming up with quick responses to things I need to think about for long and hard.
It's the worst thing you could ever imagine.
I mean, not that bad. I mean, I have, but a lot of my successful debate involves knowing the arguments I'm going to be presented with in the first place. It's when people come at me with a bunch of talking points and things like that, and I already know how to address the nonsense that they're presenting me. But then is that necessarily debate? It's not. It's just long-term preparation for stuff. And none of that ever appealed to me. And there might be a world where that's something I want to make happen one day, but it's not anytime soon. Where am I going? I'm going all the way over here, right? Sure.
Okay, well, good luck with that then, Wes.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your Diablo.
I will. I hope you have a great night. Well, and that's just it. Like, the goal, obviously, is that when you're confronting dangerous ideas, you want them to be provoked to think clearly and come up with, and so I guess maybe what I really believe is that I would rather change someone's mind because they thought long and hard about something that I said than I would change their mind because I had a quippy argument or a quippy comment in the middle of a discussion. It's just not. Uh-oh, I may have gone the wrong way. I'm gonna break down this one. And I feel like there's a lot of constructive political discussion that can be had, but it takes a special kind of person to do that. I know, I hate those mini Roblox too. I think it takes a very special kind of person. And I think you guys might have seen it. My friend Victor is incredibly intelligent. I have absolutely no qualms with taking him sincerely about the things that he said to me tonight. Like, he is smart and clever and thoughtful and all that kind. But I do think that there is a very common intellectual, pitfall that we claim equivalence. I think it's a fundamentally broken kind of thing.
We start and we meet us.
But it doesn't mean I don't appreciate him and what he did.
So you feel it too. I light.
So here I am in PvP land, which I don't want to be in, but I'm filling in my map. Like, I got no idea what all this crap is down here. And I continue to believe that climate change is a great example of this because, like, anybody can find a scientist who says climate change isn't real, but 95% of climate scientists know that it is real. Companies know that it's real, all that kind of stuff. And so, like, it's humorous to me in certain circumstances because, like, people be like, oh yeah, both sides. But that's not, like, there's no both sides on that issue. It's not a common argument with a common set of argumental basics.
I need more time.
And while I fully respect the notion that anybody can argue in favor of something, I don't think there is an equivalent responsibility and morality behind making certain arguments. So.
I need time to do that.
Come on, get going! I've never been down here before. I am way down in no man's land.
I need time to do that. I need more time. I need more time.
It's 4:30 in the morning. I should go to bed. Okay. And hey, everybody that stuck around for the discussion, which is kind of amusing because I lost my audience since I stopped the discussion. Everybody who stuck around, thank you for it. I like to think that I have a good environment for discussing serious issues, and I appreciate everybody participating. And but we're gonna call it a night because number one, I don't think I should drink any more wine other than this sip right here. And number 2, got stuff to do tomorrow. Anyway, you guys take care. Thank you for hanging out with me. We will do it again. Good night.